I think oftentimes when people hear me and see me, they think that I'm a fool. They think that somehow or another I've lost my mind, that I'm not down with the in crowd. They've said that nobody would love me and that I'm an outcast. But let me say this here now. We can be clear about anything. Please let me be clear about this. And I pray that it's received and understood. I don't want to be one of you. I don't want to be one of you weak men, weak people.
For my brother,
I'd rather die. Death is welcome rather than to call myself you spineless black men.
Side high, I ain't your traditional. Rapper smoking medicinal, stayed in detention. Life is all about principles, cynical ass niggas. Sorry that I offended you. I bring something different while niggas sounding identical. I'd rather drown in a swimming pool than to let you imbeciles stop me from topping my pinnacle. Try me blocked by the genitals, trust me, it's not intentional. It's the difference between a gangster and a criminal. Cause real gangsters can't do Breakfast Club interviews. A lot of you niggas don't own a business suit. A slave for every pair of Michael Jordan tennis shoe. But anywho, got your bitch walking around like she winning pool with no bottoms on, just the top of her swimming suit. What you gon' say when the niggas gon' try to get at you? Them in what army, or you just talking in general? Cause in the end, we all gon' die like them Seminoles, nigga. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up, these niggas weak. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up, these niggas weak.
When I look at the sorry state of black men in America today, the destruction of the family, the loss of integrity. When as a young boy, black shot down every day for years without stopping, when I look at what we are as black people, I'd rather be dead than to continue to live against such.
Y'all ain't trying to start a revolution. Y'all looking for a restitution. Niggas kill each other every day and ain't no evolution. My partner shot 100 niggas and it was never proven. We just labeled him a gangster and kept it moving. Let me give you the same outcome, separate shooting. A white man kill a black, we holler persecution. So instead of looting, it's time to find some better schooling. You can act like y'all don't understand when I'm elocuting. Did I stutter? I was never Ruben. Y'all ain't no Black Panthers. You wasn't there with Newton. You ain't Marshall Martin. Try to better humans. Instead of all these rappers, we need some better students. It's time to rebuild the neighborhoods that we helped to ruin, and the NAACP, y'all need some help recruiting. Fuck a resolution, let's get some retribution. I feel like Malcolm X when he left the movement. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up, these niggas weak. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up, these niggas weak. Y'all know what it is, yeah, I said it, nigga. All you niggas laying up with these bitches with no condoms and shit. Having mistake babies and shit, leaving these women to motherfucking raise your kids by their motherfucking self. Yeah, my nigga, I said it. You don't like what's going on in the motherfucking America, leave this motherfucker. When they said we were free, my nigga, that mean we were free to go back where the fuck we came from, my nigga. Yeah, it's a whole motherfucking continent that belong to us, nigga. It's called Africa, motherfucker. The fuck is y'all talking about? Y'all ain't trying to start no revolution. Y'all motherfuckers spent 10 bands on the motherfucking section in the motherfucking club. 10 bands to build a whole motherfucking neighborhood in Nigeria, nigga. Get the fuck out of here.
Peace to everybody out there. It's your boy Sean P in the place to be, man. Like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we're live. I got an impactful show for tonight. I'm gonna get straight into it. You know what I mean? I don't want to kind of deal with what everybody else got going on out there. I want to deal with what I want to deal with. So we're gonna get it how we're gonna get it. I don't know who else is live, so shout out to everybody else that's live. Nah, I ain't on nobody else time, Juju but my own, you feel me? But no, I am people that are interested in this particular subject matter, you know, you might be interested in another subject matter somewhere else, you feel me? And to be honest with you, you know, in all fairness, Juju, I don't tap into one of the people that you actually name. You feel me? So I can't really say too much. I just say that, you know, shout out to everybody that's live, trying to educate, inform, enlighten, and build. You know what I mean? So allow, you know, everybody the proper respect. So for those of you who are not catching the live, that may catch the replay, if you're interested in the information, this is going to be impactful. So in the description of the video, I left a host of sources that we're going to get into today, as well as the people that are tuned in and watching this particular show. If you're watching this show right now, I left you a treat. If you're interested, in the description of the video. That means anyone that's catching the live or even the replay, okay? If you're catching the live or even the replay, there are 3 books and a nice article about Mississippi in the description of this particular video. I leave you, yes, 3 books, okay? We talking about North America, so I left you 3 books. So for those of you that are tapped in right now, you're welcome. You might not even say thank you, but you're welcome. All right. So I wanna set the agenda, and I want to talk about the evidence we have, science, versus the evidence that we don't have, that doesn't exist from the Abos. Right, and he just shot out. So. What you talking about? I ain't even talking about I don't watch. I don't watch Q Butter show. If you must know, nothing against Q Butter. I just don't watch the show, and I don't support anything Sarnetta. But I appreciate, you know what I mean, brother Unc shout me out and yada yada yada. I know they're talking whatever they were talking. I heard the clip, so appreciate you, Denise, for clipping the clip and sending it to who you sent it to. I got it. It was received. All right, so peace out to Dash. You're welcome for the information. Hopefully you'll find it useful. And okay. Well then talk how you talk then. And then you know, just utilize this information, man, with care. Make sure you digest it and understand where it's coming from so that you can put yourself in position to make an honest conclusion based on real information. So again, all my descriptive videos are impactful and have information in there. Now the show from last night has presently a block on it from, I believe, that little kids video that I played. So I guess after they review it or give me permission or whatever, they'll unblock it and the video will restore or return. So if it don't, it don't. It's not a strike. It's just the content was up there. So it is what it is. But I will say this video, at the conclusion of this video, now I'm gonna leave this video up. I'm gonna leave the video up as well. So yeah, if you're here and you waiting on me to begin, I'm trying to give people time to actually grab the sources. But I do know that, you know, a lot of y'all are YouTube hopping. So you might have interest somewhere else and you might want to support or align yourself somewhere else. Go do that. I'm going to be here rocking out by myself. Whether it's 10 people, 5 people, 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, don't matter. I'm going to be here. And, you know, so shout out to everybody else that's live right now. You know what I'm saying? Brother Uncton took over Sarnetta channel. I don't know if it's a full Brother Unc channel yet, so I really don't, you know, I don't engage with Sarnetta. So hopefully, you know, if there's any residuals or anything to come out of that Brother Unc is compensated for what's going on and driving, whatever he's driving over there for that channel. Dr. Maya, shout out to her and what she got going on. You know what I'm saying? I know I was asked about her before. I don't know why, but I was. It is what it is. But no, you know, I'm just live and I didn't plan this really. You know, I was like, you know what, I'm just about to come on because for one reason, the show from yesterday, there's a dude that's still talking that was on that platform. And he was saying a whole lot of stuff that the science don't align with him, but he was saying it agreed with him. So no matter what, because of his comprehension ability, he was falling short. So what I want to do is kind of reset, go a little slow, and then provide you with a treat. So not only did I leave y'all 3 books in the description, there's a lecture that you're going to hear from here, and it's going to be a very intriguing lecture. I guarantee you're going to enjoy this. So let's go ahead and get rocking. And I'm going to touch on a couple of things that I need to touch on to set the agenda. So who are the people of the Americas? Who are these people? This is from my first source, and I'm going to just rock out. Now, according to the Jik Gorilla Apache, they have a Genesis story. And this is from one of the books that says Native Peoples of North America. I provided y'all with this book so you can download the book yourself and you can read it. But here's the Genesis story. It says, in the beginning, the earth was covered with water and living things were below in the underworld. Then people could talk, the animals could talk, the trees could talk, and the rocks could talk. It was dark in the underworld, and eagle plums were used for torches. The peoples and animals that go about by their day wanted more light, but the night animals, the bear, the panther, the owl, wanted darkness. After a long argument, they agreed to play the thimble and button game. And if the day animals won, there would be light. But if the night animals won, it would always be dark. The game began. The magpie and the quill, who loved the light and have sharp eyes, watched until they could see the button through the thin wood of the hollow stick that served as a thimble. This told the people where the button was, and in the first round, the people won. The morning star came out, and the black bear ran and hid in the darkness. They played again, and the people won. It grew brighter in the east, and the brown bear ran and hid in the dark place. They played a third time, and the people won. It grew brighter in the east, and the mountain lion slunk away into the darkness. They played a fourth game, and again the people won. The sun came up in the east, and it was day, and the owl flew away and hid. Even though it was light now, the people still didn't see much because they were underground. But the sun was high enough to look through a hole and discover that there was another world, this earth. He told the people, and they wanted to go up there. They built 4 mounds to help them reach the upper world. In the east, they mounded the soil and planted it with all kinds of fruits and berries that were color black. In the south, they helped heap up another mound and planted all kinds of fruits and that were blue. In the west, they built a mound that they planted with yellow fruits. In the north, they planted the mound with fruits of variety colors, or variety of colors, probably what they meant. Now, the mounds grew into mountains, and the bushes blossomed, fruited and produced ripened berries. One day, 2 girls climbed up to pick berries and gather flowers to tie in their hair. Suddenly, the mountain stopped growing. The mountain stopped growing while their tops were still a long way from the upper world. So the people tried laying feathers crosswise to make a ladder, but the feathers broke under their weight. The people made a second ladder of a larger feather, but again, they were too weak. They made a third ladder of eagle feathers, but even these would not bear much weight. Then a buffalo came and offered his right horn, and 3 others also contributed their right horns. The horns were strong and straight, and with them, the people were able to climb up through the hole to the surface of the earth. But the weight of those humans bent the buffalo horns, which have been curved ever since. Now, the people fastened the sun and the moon with spider threads so they couldn't not get away, and set them up in the sky to give light. And since water covered the whole earth, 4 storms went to roll the waters away. The black storm blew to the east and rolled up the waters into the East Ocean. The blue storm blew to the south and rolled up the waters in that direction. The yellow storm rolled up the waters in the west, and the vari-colored storm went to the north and rolled up the waters there. So the tempest formed the four oceans in the east, the south, the west, and the north. Having rolled up the waters, the storms returned where the people were waiting, grouped around the mouth of the hole. The polecat first went out, when the ground was still soft, and his legs sank into the black mud and had been black ever since. They sent the tornado to bring him back because it wasn't time. The badger went out, but he too sank in the mud and got black legs, and tornado called him back. Then the beaver went out, walking through the mud and swimming through the water, and at once began to build a dam to save the water still remaining in the pools. When he did not return, the tornado found him, asked why he had not come back. Because I wanted to save the water for the people to drink, said the beaver. Good, said the tornado. And they went back together. Again, the people waited until at the last they sent out the gray crow to see if the time had come. The crow found the earth dry, many dead frogs, fish, and reptiles lying on the ground. He began picking out their eyes and did not return until the tornado was sent to him. The people were very angry when they found he had been eating carrion, and they changed his color to black. But now the earth was all dried except for the 4 seasons. And the lake in the center where the beaver had dammed up the waters, all the people came up. They traveled east. Listen to me. They traveled east until they arrived at an ocean. Then they turned around south until they came again to an ocean. Then they went west, and then they turned into the north. As they went, each tribe stopped where it wanted. But the Geraselas continued to circle around the hole where they had come up from the underworld. 3 times they went around it. When the ruler became displayed and asked them where they want to stop, they said, in the middle of the earth. So he led them to a place very near Taos and left them. And there near the Taos Indians, the Geraselas made their home. So that's one creation story. I'm not going to get into the other creation stories of these other tribes. But I wanted to let like everybody know that's how the world became to be for those people. Now, that book isn't all about creation stories. There's a lot of history in the native peoples of North America as it explains who they are. But since we got that out of the way, I want to talk about the first Americans and how they had Australian genes. Due to a conversation from yesterday, this prompts these type of things to be more clear. I need to be more clear, more specific, so that if I make a claim and I don't back up the claim in whatever I say, then people can clip that, and then they can deal with what I said and ask me for evidence if I don't provide evidence for such. However, I don't ever talk without providing evidence for what I'm saying. I'm not one of the people who like to run my mouth and allow people to just sit back and listen while I say things. So a few shows ago, since I returned about the Abos stuff, I talked about where the people come. And I said the Southeast Asians or East Asians. And I also said the Oceania people. I said these people were the people who populated the Americas. And then I gave reason to it because of the Bering Strait, and that the sea level or the oceanic floor was 400 feet less than what it is today, which means there was lower water. And if you ever seen 400 feet in your life, if you go look at a skyscraper building that's 400 feet tall and you stand in front of it, you're going to realize how much water that is that comes down to where you are, where your feet is. That's a lot of water. So how deep is the actual oceanic floor? However, one person tried to insinuate that the people that I was claiming to populate the Americas was black people. We used the skin map to try to show them that these people had melanated skins due to the fact that they were living around the equator. The skin map justifies and educates people in this particular lane, but some kind of way we can't address the skin map. Some people say that's hogwash. Some people say that the people that left Africa and populated the rest of the world are the same Africans that left Africa. There was no such thing called mutation and adaptation, that these people were still African. Never mind the fact that they have been gone and some to never return, they were still African. A brother claimed yesterday that that the people of the Indus Valley culture and the Australian Aborigines, the Polynesians, the Philippines, the Melanesians, and so forth, he stated that those people descend directly from Ethiopia and the land of Kush. His evidence for such was to try to attempt to use science and paint them black, a very hyper-diffusionistic perspective. It has come to my attention today that he has spent another few hours of everybody else's time arguing against the information where it does not support him. And to add to their body of knowledge to move the needle forward, I am going to continue the Jaricillus. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but it's Jaricilla. I'll bring it back on the screen before I get started with this source, just so you'll know exactly which tribe that was whose origin story we told first. All right. This is before, anybody come on into North America. But I think I see, I spelled it wrong in the chat. Jicarilla. Or you could just call them the Apache. The next origin story would be the Iroquois. There's another origin story I think comes behind that. They start talking at that point. But there's multiple origin stories, and then the book reads. And it says it right here. How many people were living in the Americas? How did they get here? How long had they been here, and what had they accomplished? This is something that we can come back to, but I want to move forward a little bit. All right. So, but it talks about who these people were, who these native people were, and so on and so forth. But their name is JIC. I spelled it wrong. JICARILLA. Jicarilla Apache. All right, let me continue. I ain't getting into that. I don't need they are. All right, so during the last ice age, when hunter and gatherers crossed the ancient Bering land bridge that connected Asia with North America, they carried something special with them in their genetic code: pieces of ancestral Australian DNA. You remember when I was telling you that these people are linked back to those Australords, the Oceania people, and Southeast Asians and the Northeast Asians, and how they split and did all this other stuff? They brought with them a genetic code. Over the generations, these people and their descendants trekked southward, making their way to South America. Even now, more than 15,000 years after, these people crossed the Bering Land Bridge. Their descendants who still carry ancestral Australian genetic signatures can be found in parts of the South American Pacific coast and in Amazon, researchers found. Much of this history has unfortunately been erased by the colonization process, but genetics is an ally to unravel unrecorded histories and populations. Study the Hunenmeyer and study co-led researcher and doctoral student Marcus Arroyo Castro El Silva, both of whom are in the Department of Genetics and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. So I wanted to make that clear because someone on Garfield's panel was disputing Rob Bourne's uses of sources and information and trying to say who was those people who was writing, yada, 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 yada. He thought he was asking a great question because he wanted to say, see, these Africans writing about it, or he wanted to say something like that. But he asked the question not knowing that it would also put him in compromise with where his positions is because he don't have no evidence. But here we see here the Tabitha, as her name is spelled, and Marcos Araujo. These people are at the University of Sao Paulo. So this lets you know that there's some, based on their names and how they're spelled, their ethnicities are very native or indigenous to what's going on. And I try to tell y'all that, but no one really wanted to listen. So new research builds on earlier work, first published in 2015, which showed the ancient modern indigenous peoples in the Amazon share specific genetic signatures known as the Yekpekeru or Y signal, the modern day indigenous groups in South Asia, Australia, and Melanesia, a group of islanders in Oceania. This genetic connection, it caught many scientists off guard, and it remains one of the most intriguing and poorly understood events in human history. The researchers wrote in their study, to investigate the Y signal further, a team of scientists in Brazil and Spain dove into the largest data set containing the genetic data of 383 indigenous people from different parts of South America. The team applied statistical methods to test whether the Native American population had excess genetic similarity with a group they called the Australians, or the indigenous peoples of Australia, Melanesia, New Guinea, and the Andaman or the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean. In other words, the team was assessing whether the given Native American population shares significantly more genetic variance with Australians than other Native Americans do. South America groups that did have more genetic similarities with Australians were interpreted by the new research as being descendants of the first Americas and Australian ancestors who coupled together at least 15,000 years ago. My apologies. As expert, the study confirmed the previous findings of Australian genetics ties with the Caratiana and the Suri indigenous people in the Amazon. But the new genetic analysis also revealed a big surprise. The Australian connection was also found in Peru, in the Chatuna people, an indigenous group with ancestral ties to the Pacific coast, the Guarani Akawa, a group in central West Brazil, and the Exviante, a group in the central Brazilian plateau. When a team looked specifically for the Shotuna people and other coastal indigenous peoples, including the Sakura and the Narahula, the researchers found that these people had ancestry from the mix of South American people and the sister branch of the Onge indigenous people who lived on the little Andaman Island. When the team included the Exvante people in analysis, the model suggested that the coastal groups got started first and later gave rise to the inland Amazonian groups with Australian heritage. So the first settlers likely stuck to the Pacific coast due to their subsistence strategies and other cultural aspects adapted to the life by sea. For this reason, they would have at least initially only expanded through or settled the whole American Pacific coast from Alaska until southern Chile. In this context, the expansion to the Amazon passing through the northern Andes would have been a secondary movement. So according to archaeological records, a settlement on the Pacific coast dates about 13,000 years ago. The researcher said the Jibs in the time frame of the team suggested for the initial migration and later inland coupling events to South America which likely happened between 15 to 18,000 years ago, respectively, they said. Furthermore, while previously research suggested that there's two waves of first Americans, I'm going to say that again. While previous research suggested that there were two waves of first Americans who left the Beringer about 15,000 years ago, and likely several waves from Beringer after, the new study found that one of the waves that came by the Pacific route was composed by individuals carrying some Australian ancestry. This study is also a welcome addition to prior literature, which they had described signals of Australian, Southern Asian ancestry in the Amazonian groups. And an adjunct lecturer in computational engineering and research in biomedical data science at Stanford University, who led a 2020 study in Journal of Nature in Polynesian ancestry, told Live Nation in an email, Ioannidis wasn't involved in a new study. As to the Y signal isn't found in North American indigenous peoples, the author suggests that if such a migration had traveled rapidly along the Pacific coast of North America and Central and South America, then it could explain why the signal is present predominantly in South America, both on the Pacific coast and on the Amazon, but not in Northern American indigenous groups, Ioannidis said. Or perhaps indigenous people in North and Central America who had the Y signal were wiped out during Europe's colonization of the New World. So let me break this down to the people in the rear. What's being said here is that there's evidence of a potential split, where one group of people populated from one direction and the other ones came from the other direction. As we know today, the picture is getting a little bit more clearer on what routes were taken and how they actually reached where they did, based on evidence that has been excavated and written about and provided to us. This article is basically substantiating the fact that in that south traveling group, they possess something a little bit different than the north traveling group into the Americas. So these peoples that are peopling the Americas, there's a distinct difference based on some stuff that they figured that was closely more related to Australians. So let's talk about it. They talk about how did they get there. We all know now through sea voyage, right? We have evidence of sea voyage because we know that the Pacific Ocean was 400 feet less during the time of travels during the whole last glacial maximum period. So these people could get to where they needed to get to. So we know that's how some stuff ended up. But that ain't enough. Me just simply saying it is not enough, or me having a source to actually substantiate it is not enough, or the evidence that goes into it is not enough. So to add on to this unknown species found in the Melanesians, I'm gonna play this article. It's gonna have a commercial, and we're gonna follow along with it, and then I'm gonna get y'all back up to speed, and then I got the other treat for you.
Evidence of unknown human species found in DNA of Melanesians. Big think.
Ask Sherwin-Williams during the spring sale, March 24th through April 3rd, and get 35% off paints and stains with prices starting at $28.92. That means 35% off our most popular color family, blue.
You got 19
Psychologists
seconds.
Scientists found traces of a previously unknown, long-extinct human species hidden in the DNA of today's Melanesians. Melanesia is an area in the South Pacific Ocean to the northeast of Australia that includes the countries of Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, Fiji, and Papua New Guinea, as well as some islands belonging to other nations. The two ancient hominid species whose DNA traces scientists expected to find were the Neanderthals and Denisovians. But the results of the study showed something else. We're missing a population, or we're misunderstanding something about the relationships, said Ryan Bollender, a statistical geneticist from the University of Texas, to Science News. The goal for the researchers was to investigate how much ancient DNA we carry today. There was a period between 100,000 to 60,000 years ago when several kinds of hominid ancestors intermingled as one group left Africa and met another living in Eurasia. What the scientists realized is that there could have been people other than Neanderthals or Denisovans involved that we have not yet identified. Map of Oceania. We still carry some percentage of the ancient hominid DNA within us, with Europeans and Asians having about 1.5 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Some of that heritage has actually resulted in various health issues. What's unusual is that the DNA of the Melanesians has about 1.11% of Denisovian DNA, an amount higher than in other groups. It is also different from the amount of 3% estimated by other studies. Studying this incongruity led the scientists to conclude that another, third group of people bred with early Melanesians. Human history is a lot more complicated than we thought it was, said Bollinger, a native of New Guinea with a pierced nose and hair matted with pig grease. Circa 1950. Photo by Richard Harrington /3 Lions /Getty Images. What's more, Danish researchers recently came to a similar conclusion that a non-Denisovian DNA from an extinct people was present in Australian Aboriginals and native Papua New Guineans. One possible issue is that we don't have many samples of Denisovian DNA and might just not know all the variations of these people. So far, scientists only found one Denisovian finger bone and some teeth. The analysis by Bollinger is currently awaiting peer review. Further research into the ancient hominids is necessary to confirm their find. Cover photo. Huli Wigman from Lake Copiago.
All right, so again, this article, written in 2016, by the way, is providing us a pathway of what we talked about yesterday, which I can bring back up that source because it's more current, which would mean that they substantiated their hypothesis based on this link, and more evidence came out to substantiate the hypothesis that the people who peopled the Americas were in fact descendants of these Australoids, Melanesians, Philippines, and the Papua New Guineans, and all of that, all of those islanders over there, because genetically they possess something that archaic humans had possessed, more specifically the Denisovans possessed, and that is in their ancient DNA. That's not enough for you. Again, like I said, we got the evidence. I can pull it up and go from there. But I want to continue to be more specific here. So I'm going back a little bit in a Journal of Nature article that was written that actually, that helped show the way genes flowed and when they made their suggestions. My point is this. I'm doing this, I'm trying to allow the information to tell a story to everybody to where they actually can visualize what's going on and properly understand it in its context, right? So this science has been a work in progress for quite some time. And I'm showing people that 10 years ago, when this article was published, 10 years ago, they were telling you 10 years ago that the Aboriginal Australian genomes reveal Indian ancestry. And no one really thought about that 10 years ago. When the Abo community came out, nobody thought about this article that was written 10 years ago. So today I wanted to make it prevalent and relevant that, man, when these Abos came out and claimed that they've been indigenous to North America and that they've been here the whole entire time, the science was right under our nose. They had already written the story. They already had helped us identify who actually was here. But yet and still, our people, Black people, succumb to the pseudoisms of historians who propagate shit to steal from another people to build their YouTube channels up and then confiscate your money and confiscate money off of you behind their lies. So I'm not really going to get into this article, but I wanted to show people This was in your nose. This was under your nose 10 years ago. But what's funny is this, is when the lady says she confirmed an ancient association between the genomes of Australians, New Guineans, and the Mamanoa, the Negrito from the Philippines. But we have a brother who is arguing that, talking about root words. Now I explain who people are, not the fact that the people was using certain stuff to say other things. The first inhabitants of the New World are Indians. They ain't you. They don't look like you. They don't look like me. They don't look like Denise. They don't look like Sutek. They don't look like Julanda. They don't look like us. They also possess a unique, a few genetic features of an archaic hominid by the name of the Novosan. And that's stated with evidence over and over and over again. So for anyone asking who populated what, let's take a trip back and then we'll come forward. Now let me unshare, reshare, because I need the audio for this. The first inhabitants, I guess he just got here. So real quick, y'all, before I play the video. This brother in the chat, he just got here. So I want to make myself very, very clear. All right. So now they're going to try to say that the Southeast Asians are the Novosans. No, they contain, brother. Listen to this. They contain certain genes that were passed down to them through the Denovasans, bro. Through the Denovasans, and it's unique among them. Now, again, there was two groups of people that populated the Americas. You have the North Native American population, and you have the South Native American population. These people were of Oceania, Southeast Asian, and East Asian descent. These are the things that we have evidence for. I'm going to say that again. The people who populated the Americas were of Oceania, Southeast Asian, and East Asian descent, or they might call them Eurasian, just to be clear. So how in the world are we claiming that the so-called Aboriginals, which they ain't even called the Aboriginals, bro. They called Australian Aboriginals. So they're indigenous, or they're Aboriginals to Australia. This is the level of lack of scholarship that comes benumbed to people who like to type. Now, brother, you've been spending your time on this subject matter all day, and you've been letting someone who wasn't even studying the subject matter beat you to breaks. If you just simply look up the definition of Aboriginal, it tells you distinctively what it is saying, relating to the indigenous peoples of Australia or their languages. So it could be explaining who the people are of Australia, or it could be explaining the languages of the people of Australia. So how are you trying to say what you're trying to say or argue? It's your ignorance. So let me help you out. Everybody on this planet has some level of African ancestry, but they're not sub-Saharan African. They're not East African. They're not Central or West African. Hell, they ain't even North African. And this is how we know they're not North African, because the Oceania people that we're explaining, and what Denise was trying to tell you for 6 hours, is that they possess the Novosan genes that are only distinct to those Southeast Asians and the Oceania people and the East Asian people, the Eurasians. That source explains that to you. I don't understand how you get that, but let me stick to the topic and not get deterred. Because that brother, I feel for him. You know what I mean? I don't know how you commit academic or scholastic suicide by showing your ignorance and your own friends, your own people that's trying to align themselves with you is telling you to stop because you're looking stupid. So we're going to talk about, we're going to review this lecture. It's 2019 lecture from the Shore to Sea lecture from the earliest human migrations to North America. I want to peep this.
So thanks everybody. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. One of I have a wonderful job and at the California Academy of Sciences, and probably the thing I like best about it is giving public talks, and then to give a public talk in the place that is just absolutely really special to me, the Channel Islands, and all of you are here because these are special places to you. Is just really fantastic. So thanks for coming and being here, and for the invitation for Laura and Kristen and in the park for being here. The work we do on the Channel Islands, I just want to sort of say, I work with a lot of people from a number of different universities and institutions, and I'm going to talk about some of that work tonight and sort of meld it all together. We also work with Shumash partners to make this all work. Channel Islands National Park and the Sanctuary and TNC. So all of this stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is a Herculean effort by a lot of different people and a lot of different communities and interests. So I wanted to acknowledge them and thank them for all their contributions as well. So today I want to take you through about why I think the Channel Islands are central in helping us figure out when and how the first Americans arrived. And I'm going to take you on this I'm going to start off on this story about how us archaeologists told you all the wrong story for decades, all right? And we're trying to figure out the new one. So this idea of the human odyssey and when and how humans migrated and occupied different continents and landscapes around the globe is perhaps one of the biggest questions that anthropologists and archaeologists confront. This migration over 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, migrations out of Africa and around the globe. And certainly for us here in the Americas, the timing and route of this migration into the New World, into North and South America, has been a point of fascination. And for the first scholars to look at this, the consensus was, and this certainly wasn't everyone, but the consensus was that the New World had a very short chronology, and claims for deep antiquity of humans in the New World were often met with skepticism. And until the 1920s, most scholars believed that peoples reached Americas sometime only 4,000 years ago. And this has a lot to do with the politics of European colonization of the New World. It's much easier to dispossess people of their land if you believe they haven't been here very long, right? So this was steeped in politics, it was steeped in racism, but it was also sort of a conception of, well, that Native Americans in the New World didn't have the technologies, the agriculture that was seen in the Old World. That turned out to be wrong, right, in many ways. In some ways, there were different technologies and different adaptations, but this was sort of what the leading scholars, what most anthropologists, what most archaeologists believed for a long time. That fundamentally changed with the discovery of one site. This happened in 1924 with the discovery, and this is a a reconstructed photo of it with a fluted, clearly human-made projectile point embedded in the ribs of an extinct bison, right? That went extinct somewhere at least 10,000 years ago. And this one instance pushed back the chronology of the peopling of the New World 6,000 years, right? And so there was this paradigm shift, and scholars and archaeologists were sort of in a race to figure out then when and how people first arrived, if it was 10,000 or more years ago. And after decades of research, a sort of coherent story started to develop, and this became known as the Clovis first paradigm of New World colonization or New World migration, right? This idea, and you've all heard this, right? Have you remember this in college or high schools or grade schools, right? That it was big game hunters who walked across the Bering Land Bridge during the last glacial maximum, right? When sea levels were much lower and modern day Russia and Alaska were attached. They walked across, presumably following animals, following game. They staged in Alaska. And when things started to warm, sea levels rose, and an ice-free corridor, the Cordilleran and Laurentide ice sheets, started to separate. A route opened up into the New World. And perhaps unbeknownst to these hunter and gatherers, they followed big game, right? They followed these herds of mammoths and other Pleistocene megafauna down into the New World, right? And this story seemed to fit, right? There were a lot of sites dated to about 13,500 to 12,900 years ago, many of which had what are called Clovis points, right? These big honking projectile points. You have this flute that was taken off as sort of the last stage of its production that would help haft it onto a shaft. And these were the weapons, these were the technologies to hunt these big Ice Age animals, right? And site after site, from sea to shining sea in North America, something a little different in South America, but this made sense, right? You would see in some sites, not a lot, it turned out, extinct mammoth and bison bones in association with these Paleo-Indian Clovis points, what became known as Clovis points. And a generation of archaeologists told this story, right? Got jobs at prestigious universities, got grants and accolades in the study of this first Americans, right? And it all seemed to work. And for something on the order of 6 decades, this became the story of the first Americans and the one that you probably heard. So Clovis then became regarded as the first culture in the New World. The point of origin was presumed to be Siberia, passage into Alaska down this ice-free corridor during the last glacial maximum. They entered the New World somewhere on the order of 13,500 years ago. This was the baseline for human origins in the New World that became known as the Clovis Barrier, right? And anything older than the Clovis Barrier or earlier than the Clovis Barrier were called pre-Clovis cultures, right? And there were some rogue archaeologists out there who would suggest they found a site that's older than 13,500 years ago that was pre-Clovis. And they were met with much skepticism from their colleagues, right? And often their sites, their arguments were dismantled piece by piece, right? And this was sort of the story that developed again for 6 decades. So while this story sort of made sense in a lot of ways, there were problems, right? Any of you been to Alaska? Yeah, have you been to Alaska, right? Stood at the foot of a glacier, looked around, what does that landscape look like? Nothing, right? It's rock, it's melt, it's barren. It looks like this, a barren wasteland, really inhospitable. The ice-free corridor, for many folks that were telling this story, was conceived to be this fertile paradise that mammoth and Pleistocene animals were walking down, right? So while this is a bit tongue-in-cheek, the idea is when it's not when the ice-free corridor opened, it's when it was habitable, right? You can't migrate down, you know, a couple thousand-kilometer long route without there being plants and animals to sustain sort of human migration, right? So when did that happen? And in fact, recent sort of reconstructions, paleoecological reconstructions of this ice-free corridor suggest it didn't happen until relatively late. So at a place called Charlie Lake Cave and sort of the central ice-free corridor, ecological reconstruction suggests that it wasn't until about 13,000 years ago, 12.6, that we see the kinds of plants and animals that would suggest this is a habitable, migratable landscape, if that's a word, right? I think it is. And other studies have shown a similar sort of thing, right? That bison clads north and south of the glaciers during the last glacial maximum only start to show gene flow after about 13,400 years ago, right? So relatively late, right? So if we have sites that are 13,500 years ago south of these ice sheets, how do we explain this, right? And then other data like this. So this is a really coarse data, but this is put together by someone at the University of Tennessee, but it's a distribution, and I won't get in the weeds on this, of fluted points. This just means really early points like Clovis and Clovis type points, a little later than Clovis. But the point remains, where do you see most of these points, right? Big dots means a lot, little dots means a little. Where are most of them? This is the response part of the lecture. On the East Coast, right? You see them clustered on the East Coast. Well, if you're coming down an ice-free corridor, right, and you end up in the heartland of North America, where would you expect most of these points? Perhaps in the West or in the intermontane region. Now, of course, this might be, there are a lot more people with a lot more farms, a lot more people picking up, which we should not do, archaeological projectile points and noticing these things. So this might be an artifact of archaeological visibility. Okay. If we look at the ice-free corridor, recent dating of the ice-free corridor and Clovis sites in North America and in the ice-free corridor and in Alaska, what we find are that Clovis sites in the continental US are younger, Clovis sites in the corridor are younger than Clovis sites in the continental United States. So what does that suggest? People are moving up the ice-free corridor, or potentially not down the ice-free corridor. That would suggest people may have been in continental North America to move north, not moving north to south. That direction's correct there. So this was, for the most part, laid to rest in the late 1990s with the discovery of a single site, sort of akin to when that 1924 site was found. At a place called Monteverde in Chile, and it's sort of on the southern extent of Chile. It's not on the coast. It's what we call periocoastal. It's near the coast, not quite on. It has very distinct, clearly human-made technologies and things like tent pegs and bone points and lithic stone technologies. And an archaeologist, a really good archaeologist by the name of Tom Dillahay, excavated this site. And he did something really smart, that every time a pre-Clovis site, he dated this thing to 14,500 years ago, 1,000 years older than Clovis, he did something really clever, right? Every time one of his colleagues said, well, I have a pre-Clovis site, archaeologists would descend on their site, not go to their house or go to the site, descend in the literature. That's the way we do things in academia, and sort of poke holes in their arguments. So what he did is he invited all the major Clovis first scholars at the time, got a grant, invited them all down to Monteverde. Here they are, looking at the archaeology, and to a person, while they were there, they agreed, this is real. It's a real archaeological site, and it dates older than Clovis, and everything has changed. The story kind of changes when they all get back. One person dissented, but we won't get into that either. And just sort of give you an idea of how spectacular this site was. These are those tent pegs, and these are hides still secured to the tent pegs. This is sort of a semi-submerged site where you get really incredible preservation. This is one of the sources of radiocarbon, the radiocarbon date. So really, really difficult to argue with how precise and how excellent the archaeology is here. So again, this turned everything on its ear. So all those textbooks needed to be rewritten. We are in now a phase of trying to figure out when and how the first Americans arrived. If they were here potentially 1,000 years before the ice-free corridor was open, how did they get here and when did they get here? So John Erlandson, my advisor at University of Oregon with a number of colleagues in 2007, suggested that they may, and he had been writing about this and others had suggested before, but they put out this hypothesis called the Kelp Highway hypothesis, that it may be, and it was sort of an ecological paper that demonstrated that there are many of the same resources that ring the North Pacific Rim that connect Japan, the North Pacific, down into North America, the same species of kelp forests, of kelp that are available, a break in the tropics where you get productive mangrove environments, and those kelp resources pick right back up into South America as a highway potentially down to Monteverde. And so if you think about walking from Alaska to Chile, the mountains, the deserts, the different adaptations different challenges that would face you, the coast potentially offers a migration route with sort of the same kinds of adaptations that could be applied throughout, right? So by that, we mean the same kinds of shellfish and fish and sea mammals, and habitats available along this Pacific Rim that may have actually facilitated migration into the New World. And even at Monteverde, as part of this spectacular preservation, there were produced 8 different types of kelp and seaweed. So these folks were engaging in terrestrial hunting and gathering and going after coastal resources, again, 1,000 years before Clovis. And so to explain, well, the big challenge is, right, that we have this ecological model. We've missed all these early sites for decades, right? I just told you about Clovis first for 6 decades. How could we have missed this? Why have we not been working on the coast? Well, one of the problems is, well, where are all those sites on the coast, right? They're under, you already know, you already have the punchline, right? So I always tell my students that the most difficult questions in life can be explained with squiggly lines. This is one of them, right? And this is a record of temperature through time, cold and warm, and this corridor of migration was at a time when sea levels were much lower. 5% of the world's water was captured in high altitude and glacial ice that made sea levels dramatically lower. And if these people were following coastlines into the world, those sites may now be underwater.
All right, so one more time for the people in the back. Don't get distracted by the chat. Everything that I've been saying, this guy's going to bring it out in a lecture that is 4 years old. Almost 4 years old. Right around the time the Abos is heating up, this lecture drops.
I always tell my students that the most difficult questions in life can be explained with squiggly lines. This is one of them, right? And this is a record of temperature through time, cold and warm, and this corridor of migration was at a time when sea levels were much lower. 5% of the world's water was captured in high altitude and glacial ice that made sea levels dramatically lower. And if these people were following coastlines in the New World, those sites may now be underwater. And this is where I live, so I show this just as an example. So I live in San Francisco here. And so from downtown San Francisco, from Golden Gate Park right there where the California Academy of Sciences is, 14,000 years ago, you could walk out to the Farallon Islands, right?
Did y'all understand what he just said? From right here, you know, that Golden Gate Bridge basically is what he's saying. He is saying 14,000 years ago, you can walk from right here to the island. Fathom that. The bridge that all them people are jumping off of, committing suicide, stuff like that. Think about that. All that water right there, San Francisco, all that water. You can just walk right on out there with no problem. None. So it's showing you, y'all, it's showing you that 400 feet that goes back, that was sunk up, a little raft could get wherever it needed to get because the waters was not deep enough. Wasn't deep. So sea travel was pretty good and common.
So dramatic coastal change, up to 120 meters over the past 20,000 years. So significant change that may have sort of submerged many of these early sites of this coastal migration. So unfortunately, whoa, we can't just say they're underwater. Yeah, rapid. We can't say these sites are underwater. I've tried that with my colleagues. They're underwater. Trust me, they're there. We have to go out and find those sites, right? Or still test this hypothesis. And then that's sort of the phase we're in. And the Northern Channel Islands turns out to be one place that is just absolutely spectacular for looking at this kind of question. So we have, of course, the Northern Channel Islands that you're all familiar with. And these are very dynamic islands. 20,000 years ago, these islands were connected to one another where you can walk from Anacapa to San Miguel. But you couldn't walk from the mainland, of course, out to the islands, right? So these in the Quaternary, these have not been attached to the mainland. The islands haven't been attached to the mainland, but 75% of the Channel Islands that we know today have been submerged by this last glacial maximum sea level rise, right? So a significant landscape is now underwater. So despite that challenge, we have one of the most significant clusters of early sites of anywhere in the New World. It's absolutely spectacular. The oldest of which has been found at Arlington Springs, excavated by Phil Orr at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History in 1959, and recently dated by John Johnson to 13,000 years ago. Right, so on the order of Clovis, and certainly not Clovis, on a very different adaptation where people had to be in boats to get to these islands 13,000 years ago. After that, sort of some of the oldest sites until recently has been a very famous site. This is Daisy Cave that has a variety of deposits that span the Holocene, but the oldest of which are about 11,600 years ago. And while Arlington Springs is a set of human remains and no archaeology other than those human remains, Daisy Cave has a spectacular set, has produced this spectacular set of archaeology, including chipstone technologies, things we call crescents, and I'll get to these in a minute, sandal fragments, these woven seagrass sandals, olivella, purple olive snail beads where they've just ground the top off. These are probably trimmings from fishnet construction or some such, these sort of knots. And these are the oldest bone fish hooks in the New World, bone bipoints, fish gorges that were used for fishing. And a colleague at the Smithsonian, Torben Rick, did a lot of work on demonstrating an adaptation of not only shellfish gathering, but intensive kelp forest fishing 11,000 years ago. And not much other technology. This was found at the bottom, and I'll show you why this is important in the next slide. But this was found by Charles Rosaire, who was one of the first to excavate Daisy Cave. He found this at the bottom of the cave, and when John Erlandson excavated Daisy Cave in the 80s, he thought that this point, it looks like a bow and arrow point. It's really small, really delicate. We know bow and arrows don't show up until about 1500 years ago, so they're very recent. And so we thought this was found at the bottom of the cave and the bottom of Rosaire's deposits, and we thought that it was just intrusive. A variety of processes like ancient construction of burials to deposit individuals. It could have moved down during excavations, a variety of ways we can explain this, but we just thought it was intrusive to these bottom of these deposits. And that all changed in 2008 when Mike Glassow at UC Santa Barbara found a channel island. These are called Channel Island barb points. Here's that point from Daisy Cave in a site on western Santa Cruz Island that dated to 8,000 years ago. So again, sort of a moment in archaeology where sort of everything changed for us on the Channel Islands. And we recognize that these Channel Island, these stemmed points, were diagnostic of very early occupations on the islands dating to at least 8,000 years ago. And from then, we began survey efforts looking for these kinds of technologies. They've shown up all over the islands. One of the largest has been on eastern San Miguel Island that has produced dozens of Channel Island barb points, these crescents. These are Channel Island barb points. These are a variety that we call them mole points, but very similar. Again, all dated to very early, these to 12,000 to 11,000 years old, right? But hundreds of these bifaces, no sea mammal, bird, fish bones, only shellfish, right? So they certainly weren't using these to go after shellfish, right? For any of you who've gone foraging for a mussel dinner, right? So what were they being used for? Well, John and I and Torben Rick and some other folks were sitting on eastern San Miguel here, and we're having lunch at this site. And John looked across and he was like, you know, you could walk 12,000 years ago to Santa Rosa Island, to what is Santa Rosa Island today, right? It was dry land, it was all connected, didn't start to separate until about 9,500 years ago. You could walk across, and right across you could see where Arlington Springs was, right? And so the next season, John, Tori, Courtney Hoffman, some of their students, Leslie Reeder Myers, started a survey moving from Arlington Canyon, where Arlington Springs was found, that 13,000-year-old site, and started surveying the terraces along this and came up with 2 other sites that produced abundant stemmed points, early stem points, crescents, and sites that produced a new array of bone that tells us about what these were used for. So the remains of snow goose and Canadian goose, an extinct flightless duck, Chendiades, and sort of a fish bone, sea mammal bone as well, to sort of round out that these were maritime hunting technologies. Here's another shot of some of those technologies. This is what archaeologists get really excited about, these really cool pictures of these really early technologies. Again, crescents, Channel Island barbs, and these are mole points. Probably hafted like this to hunt things like waterfowl, maybe as fishing points, hunt small sea mammals like otters, hafted on shafts and used perhaps with atlatl technology to do this maritime hunting. So that brings us where we are today. And then recently, two years ago, in April 2017, we found perhaps what is one of the largest very early sites on the island. This is sort of an accidental discovery, and it happened during construction monitoring on Santa Rosa Island. Work was being done to restore and is ongoing to restore the ranch house and create an interpretive area that's going to be spectacular. And we stumbled on a site that started to produce some of this early technology. And this has been, I've been involved in this project, and a lot of other people have. I mean, we've had Shumash consultants, the San Ynez, a variety of other Shumash communities engaged in this work. John Erlinson, pictured here, and Christina Gill at the University of Oregon, Gary Brown with NPS, Laura Kern here that did our introduction, interns and volunteers. And then I worked on some of the excavations, data recovery, but this became a huge effort to sort of understand this large site as this construction and restoration of this ranch house complex was going on. And it turned out to be a really spectacular sort of interaction with a variety of different, with the Shumash, with archaeologists, with academics, with NPS, to sort of better understand the site and salvage as much information as we can in this, what turned out to be a really large site. So the main site area was right under this ranch house. And then we had another locus north of the ranch house. And just to give you an idea, I mean, most of the time when we're on the islands, what we're doing is we're digging in places that are eroding into the ocean. We're saving information before it's lost. Here we're excavating in a larger region to sort of gather information as this interpretive area is being put together. And we dug a variety of different units. We conducted paleobot analysis, augers and mapping of this site with a variety of different groups to bring this all together. And from it, it produced over 7,000 lithic artifacts, crescents, here a variety of broken crescents. These are Channel Island barb points, and a spectacular archaeology of paleocoastal early Holocene archaeology. And here's kind of the work conditions that this is from Gary Brown's work that we were working under this house to sort of salvage this site. Here's the different stratigraphy, and why I'm showing this is we did a variety of dating, and Gary did a variety of dating at this site and found that the dating was kind of all over the map. We had a lot of disturbance from this historic activity. The dates ranged from 19,000 years ago to basically recent, except a shell feature in part of the site that dated to about 8,000 years ago, right in line with those stemmed points, right, that I showed you earlier. However, this north locus, where we north of the ranch house, where we spent some time excavating small units, we found that all of these, this area dated really tightly between 11,700 years ago and 11,200 years ago. Again, a very early site, very large early site on the Channel Islands. So at this point now, after this site under the ranch house and around the ranch house, all the other sites that we found on the islands, we have something on the order. I think the real number is like 98. So I said 90. I'm a little low there, but we have 98 archaeological sites that date to more than 8,000 years on these small islands.
I hope y'all caught this. We're doing all this talking, right? All this talking.
In small units, we found that all of these, this area dated really tightly between 11,700 years ago and 11,200 years ago. Again, a very early site, very large early site on the Channel Islands. So at this point now, after this site under the ranch house and around the ranch house, all the other sites that we found on the islands, we have something on the order. I think the real number is like 98. So I said 90. I'm a little low there, but we have 98 archaeological sites that date to more than 8,000 years on these small islands, 75% of which are now underwater. right? Absolutely spectacular. So just to give you an idea, here they are now. I don't have all the sites up there, but here's what those islands would have looked like 10,500 years ago. These are maritime hunter and gatherers using these technologies to go after fish and seabirds. Many of their sites may actually be underwater. And this has led to, again, another partnership that I've been really lucky to be involved with, funded by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, with the Park Service, a variety of academic institutions that I've listed here. There are probably others. There are others, all collaborating to start to look underwater. If we have this spectacular record, none of which is older than Clovis, might there be even earlier sites now underwater? Right? So to do that is probably the worst needle in the haystack exercise that you can think of, right? When you begin, but you could start to narrow targets. So we use the terrestrial archaeology, where places that people like to set up camps on the subaerial archaeology today, or subaerial landscapes today, and we predict where these places might be underwater. So we have begun with developing this predictive model of high probability landforms where people might have gone to set up camp. And not only that, where those potential archaeology sites might still be preserved, right? Because some places can be scoured out by heavy wave action. So it's not only where they might be, but where they might last, right? For over 10,000 years. One of these places, so the Ranch House facility right in here, this cluster of early sites, 997 is one of those. There's a variety of others. These early sites sort of rim Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz. So these stars are all archaeological sites. Right in the middle of between Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz is this massive subwater submarine canyon that comes up right in between these islands, and 5 of the largest drainages on the islands would have drained into this bay today. John Erlinson called it Crescent Bay because we found these sites with crescents and stemmed points, and this may have been this really productive estuarine environment with these waterfowl, with sea mammals, with fish, with the shellfish that people were going after, that we see in the subaerial archaeological record. So after we predict that and find interesting places, we've gone out and used sonar technology to map the seafloor, but not only map the seafloor, map the subsea.
Let me let him say that again, or better yet, just look at the screen. This is the technology that is used to map the seafloor. Okay? So when people are like, they guessing, or they doing this, or they doing that, or yada yada this and yada yada that, that's what they using. It's what they using. This is how he knew that they could walk from the coastline of San Francisco out to these islands 14,000 years ago, because of how the earth is up under that water, bro.
Floor and look at the stratigraphy of the seafloor by using what's called this chirp system, launch it from a boat and do this sonar mapping. And so I'll give you some example of what this produces, right? We look in Crescent Bay, this high probability area that we're really interested in. Here's one of our track lines, right on the edge of Crescent Bay. That's what you get. Very exciting. Everybody's quiet. It's time to go, right? Well, you work with marine geologists, and actually it is pretty interesting because what it shows is what we would predict. There's this paleo channel where fresh water would have made its way down to Crescent Bay. And on the levees of that paleo channel, there are what we're calling high amplitude reflectors, which means these kinds of signatures have produced archaeological shell middens in other regions in North America and the Gulf of Mexico. They may or may not be but they're interesting features in the places where we think we should find archaeological sites, right? So what we thought should be there was actually there. So here's another one. Understanding these paleo landscapes, we probably know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the seafloor. And right along in Crescent Bay, here's the Santa Cruz Canyon, that big submarine canyon. Here are these what seem to be estuarine deposits, paleosols still preserved, right? That can yield a lot of information about what this environment looked like at the time. This is just sand, transparent Holocene sediment sand that's piled on top of this, right? And so the final phase of our research has been to actually then, if we've predicted these places, we've sonar mapped these places, then to go core and look at these places, test these locations. So along the Channel Islands, in these 4 places that we became really interested, 3 right in between Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz, we recovered 26 seafloor cores, ranging in depths from about 75 to 25 meters. The longest core is about 2.5 meters long. We tried to find places where there's not a lot of sand buildup, Holocene sand built up, where we can maybe try to find paleosols. So at this point, all of these cores are up at Oregon State University. I wish I could tell you what we found, but they are still cores up in a core facility being scanned and logged. And unfortunately, next month I'm going up there. Well, fortunately for me, unfortunately for you, next month I'm going up there. But we hope to find these estuarine soils and kind of features that we predicted. This is the first step, right, into finding archaeological sites. Just to be clear, I would not put any money on us actually finding an archaeological site. That is a losing bet. Bet on the Warriors instead of that. But this is the first step, understanding these submerged landforms, being able to predict them, being able to accurately predict where these are preserved, will down the road help us identify, I think, submerged archaeological sites that can help us unravel this question of the first Americans. So where does that bring us? Things are really interesting. I have no answer for you. Clovis is not first. Clovis is real. The story you heard is wrong when you were in school. We don't know when and how the first people arrived, but we're walking down that road to figure out that answer. And the Channel Islands are going to be key in helping us figure this out. This one of the many reasons the Channel Islands are so special is this density of early sites on the island that can tell us what people were doing on those islands, that can help us predict where those sites might be underwater and help answer this question. And it's going to be methodological advancements, new analytical techniques like this sonar mapping, like this offshore coring, and it's going to be interdisciplinary work between agencies, between academics, between interested folks that are going to contribute to this work. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have an answer at some point. And I wanted to say thanks. You know, this I was invited here to kind of talk a little bit about this excavation at the ranch house, and I did a little bit, and I tried to frame it in a larger context. But I wanted to say this. I saw a hand up first, right over here. Yes.
All right, so that's a little bit of the presentation here. I'm not going to get too much into everything else that he's talking about here, but if you want to watch the entirety of this particular bill, it's left in the description of the video so that you can, enjoy that. So now I'm gonna go to some of these free books that I put in the chat for all of y'all that want to know what's going on out here in the world. You feel me? And I'm gonna share my screen just to dig a little bit deep, and I want to go into Mississippi. So I'm dealing with the Mississippi coast and its people. All right, it should be coming up on y'all screen. Let me know if you're able to see it. All right, showing. Okay. So the first people to live on the coast were the American Indians. I'll say it again. The first people to live on the coast were the American Indians. The Biloxi, the Pascagoula, and the Mactabi tribes lived on the banks of the Pascagoula River, while the Acopisa tribe lived near the Pearl River. The Gulf Coast Indians built long, one-story houses of mud with bark roofs. They surrounded their villages and protected stockades and watched towers made of logs. We know from the large piles of shells called medians, which they left, that they ate oysters and other seafood. They also grew corn and other vegetables. They hunted the big game of the Gulf Coast, buffalo, bear, and deer. The reasons that the first Indians decided to settle on the coast are lost in distant past. But we can guess that the large supply of seafood and wild game made this area attractive. So now you have the pioneer settlers. These were the first Europeans to come to Mississippi coast. They were looking for riches and land to claim for their king. As the story goes, in the late 1600s, the powerful nations of Europe were competing to own various parts of the world. The area known as Louisiana had already been claimed by the French. What is now the Mississippi Gulf Coast was part of the French Louisiana. The French already owned well-established colonies to the north in Canada and in the south of the Caribbean islands and known as the West Indies. They wanted to build a city between those two colonies near the mouth of the Mississippi River. This city would be a trading center, and it would also be a military base that would discourage the Spanish and the English from taking over the Gulf Coast and the Mississippi River. So, you know, this is where you get them old French, Creole speaking mofos. He did say bet on the Warriors. Two Canadian brothers of French descent, Pierre Lemonnier and Thierry Iberville, and Jean-Baptiste Lemon and Beville set out to start the city. So 2 sets of brothers. You have 4 people, 2 sets of brothers. All right. Before they found the mouth of Mississippi, they landed the ship Island and Biloxi Bay. Here in 1699, they began a settlement on the shore of Biloxi Bay in order to be near a deep water harbor of Ship Island. The Ship Island anchorage was important to the French because, remember, it served as a base for their military at the mouth of the Mississippi. So I'm going to move on a little bit. I'm not going to get too far into Mississippi history, but I need to let y'all know that. So I left that source in the chat. Remember, we find these Indians before Europeans come, always near rivers, lakes, places where water could be found so that they could do hunt and all of that. So now I want to get into this, the early Americas, but since we're talking about the people of the Americas, I want to just kind of touch on a review of the Paleo-Indian research in Virginia and a view towards the future, side of a text called The Archaeology of the Virginians, the First Peoples. Now, this chapter is written by Cliff Boyd, PhD from Radford University. It should be on your screen in a minute. So I just went to Mississippi, showed you the presence of Indians in Mississippi. I'm taking you to Virginia to show you Paleo Indians in Virginia. I can take you to the Midwest. I can take you to the West. I can, off the coast of California, which the lecture, if you paid attention to the lecture, is telling you some important stuff right there. My point is this: when we talk about the presence of Paleo Indians and how they populated the Americas, it gradually took time, but we start to see them all over. So this place was inhabited, but we don't even see people really just going at it like that because there's no other people here. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. All of y'all own y'all homes, or you rent, or you have your place of residency that you call yours. And you go in your house, you do whatever you want to do because it's yours. It belongs to you. You pay the bills. So how would you feel if I came in your home where you pay the bills and I kick my feet up on your couch, I relax, cut your TV on, get up, fix me something to eat, come sit back now, eat my food with my tennis shoes on just doing whatever I wanted to do. How would you feel? You would feel disrespected. You wouldn't feel like I'm a threat. You wouldn't want to fight me for what I just did. I just totally disrespected you. This is your home. You've been here. You've been doing your thing. I didn't even speak to you when I came in. I just came in and made me someplace safe for myself, and I'm enjoying it all off you. Don't you think that the Paleo Indian would have encountered conflict as they began to populate the Americas? Think about what I'm asking you. Do you think that if people were already here, that the Paleo Indians would have encountered conflict? So, a state archaeological plan and research design for the earliest period of human occupation in North America and Virginia, the Paleo-Indian period, between 16,000 to 10,000 years ago, is proposed in this chapter. This general time span encompasses the pre-Clovis, Clovis, mid-Paleo, and late Paleo-Indian occupations in Virginia during the late terminal Pliocene epoch. I'm going to say this again. This deals with the pre-Clovis, Clovis, mid-Paleo, and late Paleo occupations. So this is telling you pre-Clovis, Clovis, Paleo, late Paleo. This is telling us everything that we need to know about who's these people in these particular areas. The following sections, they briefly summarize the temporal context in greater detail, the environmental settings, and the previous significant research. Then relevant themes related to specific aspects of the Paleo-Indian occupation. And then he finally discusses the research management plans and present to direct future Paleo periods and studies in Virginia. I'm not going to bore you to death, but I wanted to bring you to chapter 3 because there are some things that we talked about in chapter 3. We talked about Cactus Hill site. We found the evidence that was there to support it and what makes it useful for archaeologists. We talked about the different early, late, and middle Paleo, right? We talked about Clovis, pre-Clovis, Clovis. These are the things that are significant in research. And I'm just talking about Virginia. Why am I even bringing up Virginia? Because if you go back and look at when this place began to be inhabited and then they had the 13 colonies, they already had people there. So when these people rolled up on these Indians right there, right? They didn't roll up on these Indians and say, who is these black people? Who is it? You know what I'm saying? They had a name for black people already. If they just said Negro, black, just meaning the color. They didn't roll up and say that they seen Negroid looking people. They pulled up and said they seen who they said they seen or who they thought they seen, which would have been Indians or people that look like the Caribs. All right. The environmental setting. So if I have a single Aboriginal or Indigenous person in the chat, you tell me if you could survive or live in this climate. Today contains a very physiographic province, including far from the east or west Atlantic coastal plain to the Piedmont upperlands and lowlands of the Blue Ridge and Ridge Valley province and extreme southwestern corner portions of the Appalachian Plateau and Cumberland Mountains. Although Virginia remained unglaciated because of its proximity to Lake Wisconsin Laurentine ice sheet, a permafrost zone extended into northern Virginia and affected the environment of its physiographic provinces in a variety of ways. With the post-20,000 year BP retreat of the ice sheet, fairly rapid changes, geological speaking, occurred in the environment, which surely influenced the state's earliest human occupants. Based on evidence, not my grandmama, evidence from the geological examination and dating of end of moraines and ice sheets, the late Wisconsin glacial ice entered the present continental United States from Canada 23,000 years ago and reached its maximum around 19 to 21,000 years ago and was completely gone by US by 9,500 years ago. Major ice loads and subloads were created along the southern margin of the Laurentine ice sheets. As a result of shaping underlying terrain, the lobes directly to the north of Virginia, which had the greatest effect on its environment, were the Lake Erie and Lake Champlain Hudson River lobes. So during the Wisconsin maximum, strong winds of cold, dry ice, Arctic swept down from the ice sheets across Virginia to the polar frontal zones, 290 kilometers south of Virginia, North Carolina border. Let me skip ahead. We're talking about the environment. One of the more dramatic geomorphological effects of the advance of the ice sheets was the lowering of the sea levels due to the entrapment of water by the glaciers. You see how archaeologists are all telling the story about how important those ice sheets was and how how it affected the sea levels. Now, let me go ahead and make something clear to everybody before I move forward. With the lowering of the sea levels during the ice ages, some 23,000 years ago, don't you by chance fix your mouth to talk about people rafting from West Africa to the New World 20,000 years ago. There was no reason for these Africans to get in the water. They had everything under their feet. It's the home of everything there, not all, but dang near every natural resource possibly needed for them to survive. But let's move ahead. That boy Tyson going to work over there, and he been up the whole time. So, previous research in Virginia. Paleo-Indian research in Virginia up to 1989, and I'm not going to get into all of that, but I'm going to get into some points here, and then I'm going to change gears. Serious consideration of Paleo-Indian manifestation in Virginia began in the 30s and 40s, notably through the efforts of avocational archaeologist Dr. Ben McCrary, who died in the 1940s, began a survey of fluted point finds in Virginia, publishing a description of his first recorded points to the Quarterly Bulletin of the Archaeological Society of Virginia in 1947. Subsequent volumes of the Quarterly Bulletin continued to describe additions to this survey. McCrary also introduced large professional archaeological community, which incite in significant American antiquity publications. Another major milestone was the publication of Paleo-Indian research in Virginia, a synthesis in 1989 by the Council of Virginia Archaeologists, which summarizes a major professional research of the Paleo-Indian period to the point. Skip ahead because they're just talking about this thing. So I need to get to the nitty-gritty as stated. In reviewing Paleo-Indian material culture, Johnson focused on the lithic technology since little else was preserved or available for study. Johnson noted that the available evidence supported a biface and core-centered technology for clovis, with little evidence for blade production. Although he too emphasized the international selection of high-quality stone for tool production, Johnson stressed lithic influentialism, where stone resources are important, but not always the primary consideration in settlement locations as characterized in many Paleo-Indian sites. For example, there's a significant percentage of fluted points made of locally available quartz and quartz sites from the Piedmont and Tidewater regions, even when higher quality chert resources were available. Since '89, most significant research of the Paleo-Indian cultures has been focused on the eastern part of the state. Sites such as Cactus Hill have not only produced information that is important at the state level, but at a national and international level of research as well. So I want to stop right there. And I just want to plant that seed. So anytime that I brought up Virginia and showed y'all stuff, That was significant in what we got going on. But I also want to continue to build on the early people, but this time I'm going to take y'all to Indiana. Yeah, I can go wherever I want to go and find these Indians 10,000 years ago or better. Yeah, history for your ass. So as currently known, the prehistory of Indiana ranges from a circa of 10,000 BC to approximately 1650 when people of European descent began to keep historical accounts of the area. Prehistoric cultures in Indiana follow the same general cultural sequences and display similar cultural traits as those found in the eastern woodlands area of the United States. However, given Indiana's location among different Great Lakes riverine cultural areas and its geographic and environmental settings bordering the southeast and the upper Great Lake region, one would expect and indeed does find a number of cultures and historic contexts is unique to the state. Some of the latter possesses a combination of characteristics of cultures from nearby cultural areas or similar time frames, while others are unique in the region and beyond. Lo and behold, the Paleo Indians of Indiana. Based upon current evidence, not grandmama, based on current evidence, Paleo Indians are thought to be the earliest Native Americans who populated the New World, including the area known to us as Indiana, during the end of the last glacial maximum. Thus, their adaptation, there's that word, that evolutionary word called adaptation, were two cooler and changing climates with different vegetation than today. A study indicates that, given their large territorial ranges and low population, Clovis Paleo Indians were specialized large game hunters, although they did also take the small game. Most likely, they were small bands of hunters gathering for foraging individuals who brought with them a sophisticated toolkit technology for killing and dressing large game, such as the caribou, and including some species which are now extinct. Here you have it. The Paleo Indian projectile points are lanceolate, and many consist of similar in the form throughout the Americas, and are often ground at the base of hafting purposes. The tools are well made out of good quality chert raw materials and for the most part exhibit fine workmanship. Common projectile point types found in India include Clovis, Gainey, Hilo, Ajit, Basin, Cumberland, Quad, Plainview, and in the late Paleo-Indian times. Paleo-Indian points are present in nearly every county in Indiana. Other tools include scrapers and long blades, as you can see here in the picture. The Paleo-Indian occupations in Indiana were of low population density, and often sites are short-term specialized activity areas found near large streams and other major water sources. Often only surfaces found in a few scattered lithics are present. Paleo-Indian sites are also found near chert sources. An example of the substantial Paleo-Indian site in Indiana and the Alton site, which is a multi-component occupation of some time, an intensity of terrace of the Ohio River near the Wyandottes church source and yielded many Paleo-Indian points and other church tools manufacturing debris. A study of Paleo-Indian occupation in Kankakee area of Indiana notes that the Paleo-Indian church type usage reflects their territorial movement, particularly distancing of a source of raw material and discard sites of their stone tools. From this kind of study, White states, excuse me, early Paleo-Indian times, the study found that later high-low points were found in a smaller range than that of the early Paleo-Indian or God Basin groups. Early archaic sites in Indiana are found in most environmental settings and in a much larger than earlier times. This is due to population increasing because early archaic time period was the time of environmental and climatic change of diversification becoming more similar to the environmental situations we are familiar with today. Early archaic peoples were using resources in most of the environmental settings. Still, early archaic people were nomadic hunter-gatherers, seasonally exploiting the resources in their environment. Lo and behold, technologically, There's an increase in the types of variety of early archaic tools, and the appearance of new hafting techniques is related to the new sources being exploited and the use of a spear thrower of the ATL. Hafting techniques include notching and bifurcated bases of a spear point and knives. Processing of wild floor resources involve the use of grinding and pitted stones. Projectile points. Types associated with the early archaic including Thebes Street, Charles, Big Sandyside, Notch Kirk, McCorkle, St. Albans, LaCroix, and Kanawha. Studies of the raw material types of thieves and Kirk's group indicated high quality chert types with thieves and medium quality chert types of Kirk. Based upon the raw materials, studies Canton proposed that thieves' home ranges may have been as much as an order of a drainage magnitude greater than those of Kirk users. Let me stop. The point of this is the fact that we have evidence of these people being here, undisturbed. We ain't talking about bodies, we ain't talking about wars, we talking about a people developing their culture in many different places. We went to Virginia, we went to Indiana. Prior to that, we just heard a lecture talking about California being able to walk out several miles into the goddamn Pacific Ocean. We have evidence of other things that we talked about. On other shows, we brought to you other scientific endeavors that support Paleo-Indian culture in the Americas undisturbed. We're not talking conflict. We're not talking these big old wage wars. So my point is this. When it comes to the people in the New World, they come by way of boat and the Behringer. We have to honor and appreciate that. To say these people are Black people, as in Black distinctively meaning African descent, would be foolish. Everyone on the planet is fundamentally African, which also indicates that they descend from Africa. But due to the genetic evidence we have today with admixture and such, the Paleo-Indian is closely related to the Oceania people, Eurasian, and Southeast Asian people who possess a unique, not a unique, specific unique genes that are closely related to archaic humans as we know today called the Denovicens. Anyone that is arguing color is absolutely having the wrong argument. We don't have to use the skin map to understand that everyone close to the equator, we're fighting for UV rays. Well, they needed to protect them against UV rays, right? The sun beaming on you near the equator. You got to have some form of protection, and rightfully so. That's why when we, us yellow people, light skin, if we go out in the sun, like the Florida, and we're there for 2 or 3 months, whenever we return to wherever we're from, our complexion is brown skin. We're a different shade of what we were when we came into Florida. That is our body trying to protect itself from UV rays. So color shouldn't be a description and only does it, well, you can use color if you want to, but it shouldn't be a clear indication of why you're using that color, because culture, the material culture, is what set it aside, and the genetics substantiate it. Also the archaeological record and the geological record. So we know these things because we start marrying the sciences together. And by marrying the sciences, it allows us the ability to come to an honest conclusion that Black people, which the definition of Black equates to African Americans, and what the word is intended, Black people, African Americans, descendants of West Africans, we were not in the Americas from neither direction. The people that peopled this are specifically Oceania people, Southeast Eurasians, and Eurasian type people. If someone insinuates differently, Based on the evidence bestowed upon you today, with a description full of resources, you should be able to see and indicate if that is argued or not argued. We use science to separate. And now we know. Look at Keenan coming in late. Bro, I'm almost 2 hours in. You just now coming in late. So now, I'm going to just take a second and entertain this right here. Keep promoting cars of false propaganda, you clown. I'm going to entertain this for 1 minute. Here's the 1 minute that I have. What is your source that would say the people who came from Oceania, Southeast Asia, and Eurasia are African? And which one of these people brought the sickle cell to the Americas? Because since you keep bringing it up, you dummy, you talked about sickle cell yesterday. That's why I'm bringing it up. Give me your source, bro. Give me a source. Boom, dagger. Dagger. You back in that back chat talking so much. Give me your sources, bro. What's your argument? What's your argument, man? What's really real? What are you arguing? I just need to know if you're arguing that the people in the Aborigines of Australia, are you claiming that they are Africans and they are the first people to populate the Americas because they're Africans? All I need is a source, bro. I need somewhere to start with you. I don't need you jumping all the way around the world. I'm not dealing with your back chat behavior. I damn sure ain't Sonetta. Now, I just went through and I provided everyone in the chat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sources. And then I give away 3 books. So I need someone that's talking the most in the chat to tell me what his position is clearly and be able to articulate his position clearly and provide evidence. If you don't have a source, do not hop on, because you've been talking in the chat since the show began. You done left, came back, left, came back, left, came back. If you talking without a source, you're unwelcome. I am going back to that mode that if you ain't got a source, you need to shut up all the way. That's what the experts do. That's how people conduct themselves. They don't get caught jumping down rabbit holes. So whatever you was talking about in the chat, young Dame West, the link is in the chat, but do not hit my link if you don't have sources and you can't articulate yourself and have a conversation. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time or mine and the people in the chat. They could be watching Power. They could be watching Bel Air. They could be doing a host of things. Versus listen to you not being able to articulate your point or provide us with a source that's going to be useful for answering questions. And that's just the truth of the matter. Right. Waste time like a mug. Horrible at it too. I ain't got a lick of a source. So I want to come to something real quick. I want to show y'all this. He said, please hurry up, Real Housewives of Atlanta coming up. He started stuttering, huh? I figured that he would. They just want to sound tough. I figured it out that they just want to sound tough. But I put the link in there and I ain't heard nobody come on yet, so I'm gonna wait a little bit. Let me show y'all this.
Paleo-Indian people are the first human beings to arrive in the Americas.
Colorado is the heartland of Paleo-Indian studies. There's probably more Paleo-Indian sites, Folsom period sites in Colorado than anywhere else.
Each of those sites gives a unique snapshot into what people were doing in that specific locality, how they were living.
There's some strong evidence that between about 20,000 and 12,000 years ago, human beings were arriving in the Americas, but there's some evidence that suggests that maybe that migration was even older.
The Paleo-Indians living here were really the first pioneers in Colorado.
This program was generously made possible by the History Colorado State Historical Fund,
supporting projects throughout the state to preserve, protect, and interpret Colorado architectural and archaeological treasures. History Colorado State Historical Fund. Create the future, honor the past.
with support from the Denver Public Library, History Colorado, and
One of the reasons that I love archaeology is because the people that are living in those other times and other places are just like you and me. What does it actually mean to be human? What were their daily challenges? What are the things that they stayed awake at night thinking about? What did they laugh about? It's all of those kinds of questions, the essence of what makes us human, that I think about as an archaeologist.
The study of Paleo-Indians is really exciting. Everybody likes an origin story. There's great mystery about when people first came to this continent and when they first came to Colorado.
Paleo is Latin for old. Indian comes from Columbus's mislabeling of indigenous people of North America as Indians. Archaeologists talk about the Bering Land Bridge and a migration from Asia, but that's a disputed theory. If you ask many American Indian cultural leaders, they'll say we've always been here.
They were our first people here. We have evidence of them definitely here 11,500 years ago. We have some indirect evidence for them here as long as 13,000 years ago.
We used to think that Paleo-Indian culture was central to the Great Plains because that's where we've discovered a lot of the big sites. But now researchers are finding Paleo-Indian sites throughout the United States.
And along with that, they had really interesting material culture. It's the stuff that people made, that they used, that were part of their everyday lives.
Now, most of these sites are pretty subtle. They're not like the ruins of the Southwest where you have standing walls that you can see these big rubble mounds and you have potsherds and things laying on the surface.
There are a lot of preservation issues with particularly archaeological sites as we have more and more people moving to Colorado. There's actually a term for this. The National Park Service has recognized the impact that people have on our sites. We love them to death.
Physical anthropologist Dr. Alice Herlishka stated early human history did not exist in the New World and instead promoted the theory that humans existed in the Americas for a relatively short period of time, only 3,000 to 4,000 years. According to the Smithsonian's Dr. Frank H. Roberts, the question of early man in America became virtually taboo. However, Roberts was not afraid to contradict the toted theory. In contrast, he believed humans predated this limited time period and even hunted megafauna.
Megafauna literally means large fauna, large animals.
The Ice Age in North America, as you might imagine, presented us with a very, very different landscape, right? There are glaciers coming down into North America.
Megafauna roamed the West and throughout the world during the late Pleistocene, the last great ice age. Imagine a ground sloth as big as a hippo.
Muskox look like somebody's idea of an animal. They've got horns, they're kind of like a cow-shaped thing, but they've got this long hair that hangs all over them.
It's unlike anything you've ever seen. And then there were horses and camels and saber-toothed tigers and all kinds of wonderful creatures running all over North America, and then human beings show up. What happens then?
People are really small, megafauna are really big. One of the hallmarks of their technology is spears and getting up really close to animals for hunting.
The vast majority of the archaeological evidence that we have for these people is stone tools. Why? Because stone preserves well in the archaeological record. Does it mean that they weren't collecting plants and other animals and things like that? No, it just means that all we've got left for these people are the stone tools.
That's how we know humans were there. There is a wide variety of artifacts and material culture that Paleo-Indians would have had, but there's a very small portion of it that has survived for archaeologists to study.
And we try to extrapolate from the climate, from the kinds of animal bones that we find, and from the oral traditions of American Indians today, which relate back, in many cases, hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Radiocarbon dating is one of the world's great gifts to archaeology. Carbon-14 in our systems that is in equilibrium. It's in the same proportion as the air that we breathe and the water that we drink and the foods that we eat. As soon as we die, that equilibrium is broken, and the carbon-14 that's in us begins to decay at a known rate called its half-life.
And from that, scientists can date sites based on how much carbon is left.
These are great dates for archaeologists.
Then one of the most methods.
Let me help y'all out with that again. I need y'all to understand what these archaeologists have stated here very quickly. It's very important because I can't play this whole thing. I know PBS probably gonna hit me with content bullshit, yada, yada, yada.
As soon as we die, that equilibrium is broken, and the carbon-14 that's in us begins to decay at a known rate called its half-life.
And from that, scientists can date sites based on how much carbon is left.
Now, this is answering the question about archaeological sites and digs and what they're looking for. So this is how they know that they can find evidence of such. If it is there, they know that how long they have before they can't be able to determine X, Y, and Z.
These are great dates for archaeologists.
Then one of the most important methods that scientists use to learn about the past is context. We have fires, we have tools, we have seeds. All of those make up a context, and archaeologists use the context of how artifacts and features relate to each other in a site to understand the past.
In 1908, George McJunkin, a cowboy and former slave, discovered some
All right,
unusual...
so here we go. We back to George. So I ain't gonna beat a dead horse, right? We know the story of George, what he was doing, what he discovered, how it went. He would later on die. Someone else will get, stake claim to his findings, and boom, everything sets off a whirlwind of data that we know, that we now have, that tells us that the first people of the Americas were not freaking Africans. They were Paleo Indians, which they really didn't call themselves Indians, as pointed out by Khalil in the chat. But that's what we're going to use. Anyone with evidence different than Paleo Indians being in the Americas, being the first people of the Americas, please join the panel with your evidence. If you join my panel and you do not have a source and start talking without a source, we cannot communicate. I am not having a conversation with no one that does not have a source. If you're just gonna just keep running, taking me around the world, no, we're gonna deal with a source, one topic at a time. Again, if you think the first peoples of the Americas was Africans, hit the link. You think okay, let me do this better. Let me say this differently. If you think the first people that peopled the Americas was black, which indicates that they were Africans. Being melanated does not make you my brother or my cousin. Being melanated just means that you developed independently in an area on this earth near the equator where your skin needed some protection against the sun. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to say anything. Just ladies and gentlemen, black, it's an adjective. The very darkest color, or in the absence or complete absorption of light, the opposite of white, belonging to or denoting a human group having dark colored skin, especially of sub-Saharan African ancestry. Black, color or pigment, a member of a human group having dark colored skin, especially one of sub-Saharan ancestry. That don't work for you? You want a different definition? You want to go, you want us to pull up the law? You want us to do this? You want to go to, since you like to use etymological fallacies, you want to do that? That's what you want to do? Since you like using etymology, so pay close attention. Black, adjective, absolutely dark, observing all light, the color of a suit or coil. That's what you want to go with? All right, it says more. Black was used of dark-skinned people in Old English, of coffee with nothing added, attested in 1796. Do you really want to deal with black, bro? How black do you want to get? How black you want to get? Black as a noun, the color black, the meaning of dark-skinned persons, Africans, 1620s. I mean, what do you want to do, bro? But that's immature. So I know specifically what I know what I'm denoting here by the word black, what it means. The Paleo Indians populated the Americas first. They're the first Americans. They were of Eurasian, Oceania, and Southeast Asian descent. That's where they descend from. They descend directly from Eurasians, or some people will say Siberians. Instead of Eurasians, they'll say Siberians. So we'll just say Siberians. Siberians, Oceania people, Southeast Asians. Who's going to say that the first people of the Americas is not one of the three people and that there's something else? Because that's been the topic of the conversation the entire time. Now, Dame, what you can do, where you at, Dame? What you can do is you can show me these Twa people supposed to be in Oceania. You show me them. We're not listening to Kiowa because he came on here the other day and failed, and he don't have a source. So it don't make no sense for him to click on the link and have a conversation with anyone because he doesn't possess what? A source. He possesses grandmama. And then lo and behold, he sits there and says what he says. Now, I'm gonna get back to the video because I really thought that we was gonna have some action right there, but you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go somewhere else. This dude insinuates that someone is shook, brother. If you don't have a source, it don't even make sense for me to talk to you, because I can't be the only person providing evidence, and you want to argue against the evidence presented while never providing evidence. You won't even tell me where to go find something. So sit down, learn something.
And this isn't just a scientific question, it's also a political question, right?
If people had just gotten in before you, it's not that big of a sin to take their land from them, as people that have been here for 10,000 years. But the Folsom site had artifacts, humanly made artifacts in direct association with Pleistocene animals.
This was the first evidence that human beings were actually hunting giant bison during the Ice Age.
It really killed the controversy. People accepted the fact that they had been here that long. This also gave American archaeology more clout in the world.
16 years after McJunkin's discovery in New Mexico, Claude Coffin, his son Lynn, and friend C.K. Collins were poking around an old school near their Fort Collins ranch and made a discovery that once again transformed the Paleo-Indian conversation.
So all we had of evidence of Folsom is the projectile points, is the arrowheads that they used to kill those bison. We didn't have the rest of what they would carry around as a normal complement of day-to-day activities until the discovery of the Lindenmeyer site up near Fort Collins.
The Lindenmeyer site was found in 1924 by the Coffin family, as well as a family friend, C.K. Collins. The Coffins were avocational amateur archaeologists, enjoyed collecting arrowheads, decided to go for a walk, and in doing so, they discovered this really significant site.
They were finding these little fluted projectile points that had a big flake off of the sides.
The irony was that the Folsom era was not known to science in 1924. It'd take a couple years of work at the Folsom type site in New Mexico to make those discoveries well known.
The Coffin brothers found their Folsom points 3-ish years prior to the Folsom find in New Mexico, but because they sat on it and they didn't formalize their find, New Mexico was able to capitalize on that first.
The Coffin brothers started inquiring more and wrote letters to the Geological Survey in Washington, D.C., saying, hey, we found this pretty significant site. Will somebody come look at it? That letter made its way to the desk of Frank Roberts. And in November 1934, he actually came out and visited the Coffin brothers. Frank Roberts, as well as the Coffin family, found Folsom artifacts, charcoal, and bone 15 feet below the surface. And this is exactly what Roberts was looking for.
All right, so look at this archaeological site, this dig in Folsom. Look at that. Look at all that digging that they did, because they was turning up evidence everywhere at this site. 15,000 feet. I mean, my bad, not 15,000 feet. I'm sorry. I apologize. 15 feet below your feet. 15 feet. They're finding bones, all kinds of stuff. Like you, bro. It is what it is. So the history of the Paleo Indian in the Americas is set in stone. It's set in stone. Again, if you have a source and we can talk about the source and the point of contention, if you have a source that refutes anything that was said in this video or any other video, if you have a source and we can pull the source up and we can read the source together and we can extract information from the source, hit the link, join the show. If you don't have it, stop arguing with people in the chat, because we're not arguing with no one with no evidence. It's just that simple. We're not finna waste no time today. I'm gonna play a little more of this video. We'll wait again and see what's up. Because guess what, y'all? The dude Dame that was in the chat, he got the link. He was also told that he need evidence if he gonna hit the link. Did he hit the link? No, he didn't hit the link. Neither is Kiowa, because neither one of them got a laptop or a cell phone that they could share sources.
From 1935 until 1940, the Smithsonian excavated the site. And it was amazing. What they were looking for was the evidence of a Folsom campsite. And sure enough, they found that. Thousands upon thousands of chipstone flakes from making stone tools and sharpening those stone tools, thousands of animal bones, hundreds of Folsom points, as well as fragments, even bits of jewelry, as well as pieces of ochre and hematite, things used for paints.
The Lindenmeyer site was the first Folsom campground known. So if we're going to have a chance of finding out something about Folsom people that moves beyond just their hunting technology, it's going to be at Lindenmeyer.
The Folsom site in New Mexico was a bison kill. Thousands of years ago, hunters had descended upon these animals and killed them, slaughtered them, and then moved away. What was never found at Folsom was an associated camp where the people were living. What Roberts had at Lindenmeyer was something very, very different. We actually have the remains of a campsite that was probably occupied by many different groups of people.
It's a place where the north-south tending front range of the Rocky Mountains intersects the east-west Cheyenne Escarpment, a ledge, a balcony from the plains of Colorado onto the plains of Wyoming.
We think of these groups as primitive and scattered, yet research has shown us that there were a lot more people living here than we previously thought. So at the Lindenmeyer site, we see different groups coming together, probably to trade, arrange marriages, feast, and to celebrate with each other, just like we do now. Before now, people thought that Paleo-Indian cultures, if you will, just used rocks and spears and were very simple. What we see at Lindenmeyer include things like sewing needles and grinding stones, but then also a lot of stone tools that were used for butchering and sewing and making hides.
Here we have pieces of soapstone as well as bone discs, about the size of a $50, with little tick marks or etchings along the exterior of them. Were they tools? Were they gaming pieces? Were they just pieces of doodling? We're not quite sure, but we've not found them on any other Folsom site.
Lindenmeyer is famous because it is such a big site.
All right, so this dude on the panel, his name is Kiowa. He's here. Everybody know who he is? I don't know why he's here, but Kiowa, do you have a source where we can start this conversation that you can put in the private chat before you open your mouth?
It's Kiowa, and you know to say it right.
Nah, ain't you? Kia, like the damn
No,
car.
it's not KIA, jackass.
You have a source, brother.
Yep, just dropped it in the back for you.
All right, thank you. What is this that I'm pulling up and why?
Addressing the term black, and actually it also goes into, actually kind of touches on the video too.
Which video, brother?
Actually, your whole presentation, let's just say that.
Do you know what I presented? Because I don't think you've been here the entire time.
And the peopling of America or something like that, right?
Everything that I presented in the video was dealing with science.
Mm-hmm.
Not color of nobody's skin, science.
Okay.
So you brought a source about black. So let me put that on the screen because it looks like this is the only thing you're gonna be able to talk about tonight. So what's your
Just read it.
No. I don't want to read it. Where do you want me to go? This is your article.
No, you actually got to read it. You got to put everything in its proper context. So you got to read it.
No. I don't have to. I know the definitions, brother. Where do you want me to go that will support you saying the definition of black, bro? And it's
actually, let's start right here, right there.
Right where? The 39th section?
Yeah.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for everybody that's paying attention, this source that he provided now is the People versus Hall. Holding as a matter of public policy under the state statute that Chinese, I want you need context, right? That's what he says.
Mm-hmm.
Holding as a matter of public policy under the state statute that Chinese, a race of people whom nature has marked as inferior, were precluded from testifying against whites. So this is People versus Hall. Okay, now below it is telling you now that this is an opinion in section 399, which we're not going to read. As you can see, it says opinion, and then it says Murray, which was the judge. But he told me to read the 394 section, so I'm going to read the opinion of the judge.
That's the starting point.
So here is the opinion of the judge. The appellant and free white citizens of this state was convicted of murder upon the testimony of Chinese witnesses. I'm going to say this again, y'all. The People versus Hall is referring to a white citizen of the state who was convicted of murder upon the testimony of Chinese witnesses. The point involved in this case is the admissibility of such evidence. This is an opinion. The 394th section of the Act concerning civil cases provides that no Indian or Negro shall be allowed to testify as a witness in any action or proceeding in which a white person is a party. The 14th section of the Act of the April 16, 1850 regulating criminal proceedings provides that no black or mulatto person or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence in favor of or against the white man. The true point at which we're anxious to arrive is the legal significance of the words black, mulatto, Indian, white persons, and whether the legislation adopted them as generic terms or intended to limit their application to specific types of human species. Before considering this question, it is proper to remark the difference between the two sections of our statute. I already quoted the latter being more broad and comprehensive in its exclusion by the use of the word black instead of Negro. Conceding, however, for the present that the word black, as used in the 14th section, and the Negro in the 394th are convertible terms. Black and Negro are convertible terms, and that the former was intended to include the latter. Let us proceed to inquire who are excluded from testifying as witnesses under the term Indian. When Columbus first landed upon the shores of the continent in his attempt to discover a western passage of the Indies, he imagined that he had accomplished an object of his expedition and that the island of San Salvador was one of those islands of Chinese sea, lying near the extremity of India, which had been described by the navigators. Acting upon this hypothesis and perhaps the similarity of the features of physical conformation, he gave to the islanders the name of Indians, which appellation was universally adopted and extended to the aboriginals of the New World, as well as of Asia. From that time down to the very recent, the American Indians and the Mongolians or Asiatics were regarded as the same type of human species. In order to arrive at a correct understanding of the intention of the legislator, it would necessarily go back to the early history of legislation on this subject, our statute being only transcript of those states. This is still the judge, and this is still the opinion. So I'm going to skip ahead here.
No, don't skip ahead. No, you need that part. That you got to put it all in context.
Brother, I have context already.
No, you don't. You got to keep it going. You're taking it out of context right away by
You
skipping.
brought to us, right?
You have to read it in its entirety.
People versus Hall. A court case about a white man killing Chinese people, and then and then what is stated to say who can testify against this white man and who couldn't testify against this white man. Everyone was excluded to testify against the white man, but the white man. That's the deal.
Okay.
So
now go back to where you stopped reading that, and let's keep reading.
You can read ethnology. This is where I stopped at. You want to read it? Read it. Because I'm gonna go down here.
That's where you scrolled down to. Go back up.
I read this, bro. In order to arrive at a correct understanding of the legislature, it's necessary to go back to the early history of the legislature. I read that.
Yeah, you stopped at the older states and then continue from there.
This has nothing to do with the term black.
It does. That's why you have to keep reading.
No, we understand the court case. This doesn't. Because
there we go with them shook tactics again.
No, it's not, bro. Listen to what
it
it's
is.
saying. All right, so listen to what it's saying. If it has something to do with the color, then here it goes. At the period from which legislation dates, those portions of Asians, which include India proper, the Eastern Archipelago, and the countries watched by Chinese waters as far as then known, were dominated. The Indies, from which the inhabitants had derived the generic name of Indians. This ain't got shit to do with the term black. Ethnology at the time was unknown at a distant science, or known had not reached a high point of perfection, which is in the sense attained the scientific inquiries and discoveries of masterminds of the last half century. Few speculations have made. Wait, I'm not finna read all of this shit. These were general in character and limited to the visible and palpable variations which could escape the attention of the most common observer. Moving right along. None of this is dealing with color. Many indigenous speculations have been sorted for the purpose of sustaining this opinion because this is still the opinion of the judge. This is why I'm saying all of this other stuff is irrelevant. The judge's opinion cannot be.
How about you just read instead of trying to add your little 2 cents into it, so this way you can try and minimize what you're reading.
I'm not minimizing.
That's another one of those shook one tactics.
Okay, what the fuck does it say right here, bro? What does it say?
That's nice. How about you just read it instead of just adding your 2 cents into it?
Whose opinion are we getting? Whose opinion are we getting?
Again, stop the shook one tactics. Let's just read it.
No, help me, because who's delivering the opinion? It tells you
that's
right
nice.
here.
The judges are delivering his opinion. We got that. How many times you got to repeat that?
Delivered the opinion of the court.
I know. How many times you got to repeat that instead of just keep reading?
You act like you can't read.
I'm waiting for you.
Okay, so you can't read. You waiting for me. I want to get directly to black.
Nah, you're scrolling right past a very important part.
Okay, what is that part?
Because this part's starting to touch on your presentation from today.
What is the part?
The part you're not trying to read.
What is it? Tell me. So I'll go read it. So everyone.
Go back to where you started off with the archipelago, and then you just skip right on past a bunch of shit. Actually, you know what? Just start right there.
That has nothing to do with shit, bro.
There you go. Just start from the eastern part of Karamachka, the Aleutian Islands.
Bro, where are you asking me to read from?
Right there. See where it says from the eastern portions?
Yeah, that might
right there.
Yeah, from the eastern portions of Karamachka, the Aleutian Islands form a long continuous group extending eastward to the portion of North American continent inhabited by the Esquimaux. They appear to be a continuation of the lofty volcanic ranges in the traverse. The two continents are inhabited by a race who resemble in remarkable degree in language and appearance, both in the inhabitants of, how you say that name? Karamachka, who are admitted to be the Mongolian type. Okay, so this is referring to. You sure you want me to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, the Mongolian type and the Esquimaux, who again turn resemble the tribes of the American Indians. So these two tribes resembles the American Indians. Okay. The similarity of the skull and the pelvis and the general configuration of the two races, the remarkable resemblance in the eyes, beard, hair, and peculiarities together with the contingent of the two continents might well have led to the belief that that this country was first peopled by the Asiatics, and that the difference between the different tribes and parent stock, such as would necessarily arise from circumstances of climate pursuits and other physical causes, was no greater than the existing between Arab and European, both of whom supposedly belong to the Caucasian race. Although the discoveries of eminent archaeologists and researchers and modern geologists have given continental antiquity to the thousands of years of anterior of evidence of man's existence, the light of modern science may have shown conclusively that this is not the people that inhabited of Asia, but the Aborigines are a distinct type. And as such is claiming distinct origin, still it would not in any degree alter the meaning of the term, the render the specific which before generic. So I am trying to get to the part where black is discussed in the definition. We understand all of this because we didn't went through all of this. We know who the people in the Americas is. So
Well, you see, you just said there's a distinct type, right? That they're not the same as those Asiatics.
no. We know that there is a distinct type of two people here in the Americas who are the natives. They are the Indians. They're not of the Asians.
Which means they didn't come from there.
No, again, that does not say that they do not come from there, because there were two groups that peopled the Americas.
No, that's not what he's not talking about peopling the Americas.
So, bro,
he's
listen.
Not talking about your version of peopling the Americas.
No, there's only a version. There's not two versions.
Might well have led to the belief that this country was first peopled by the Asiatics.
To be in continuation of a lofty volcanic ash.
And that difference between the different tribes and the parent stock, such would arise from the circumstances of climate pursuits and other physical causes, was no greater than that between the Arab and the European, both of whom are supposed to belong to the Caucasian race.
Ain't even
Although the discoveries of eminent archaeologists and researchers, I can't see through that.
You ain't even reading, bro.
I was.
Hold on. Do you understand what you just said?
So you just scrolled around?
No, I didn't. Do you understand what you just said?
There we go. Oh, that's right.
I'm asking if you comprehend.
Although the discoveries of eminent archaeologists and the researches of modern geologists have given this continent an antiquity of thousands of years anterior to the evidence of man's existence. Oh, shit. And that the light of modern science may have shown conclusively that it was not peopled by the inhabitants of Asia. It was not peopled by the inhabitants of Asia, but that the Aborigines are a distinct type. Now we can go ahead and scroll on down to the black part.
All right. No. Let's stop right there. So what does he mean, this judge? What does he mean about the Aborigines of a distinct type? Because let me enter into the equation.
That they are their own people and they didn't come from Asia.
Let me do this again.
No, go back. Let's get back to the black part. No. Stop the games. Stop the show tactics.
No. I'm going back, brother. I'm going back. The first Americas had indigenous Australian genes. See, this is how I knew that you didn't watch the show, because specifically I led the show talking about who the first peoples of the Americas were. Indigenous South Americans share DNA with indigenous people in Oceania. That
dropped because they also seen people here that resembled those people too,
which ain't you. So again, you're a little late. You're a little late to the party, bro, because this is dismissing you as a potential Indian. You're kind of killing yourself. So
definitely not.
All right, so let me let you go.
You're just trying to find a loophole to make it and go back to your little pseudoscience theories.
I don't look for loopholes.
Excuse me, hypotheses.
I don't look for loopholes, brother. I look for evidence. So again, you brought this source to talk about black.
Okay, just keep going.
Oh, so go ahead and read. Where you want me to stop so you can read? There you go.
Right
Boom.
there.
Right there. Read.
Again, the words of the act must be construed in pari materia. It will not be disputed that white and Negro are generic terms and refer to two great types of mankind. If these, as well as the word Indian, are not to be regarded as generic terms, including the two great races which they are shit. Which are god damn, where the fuck am I? All right. Which they are intended to designate, but only specific and applying to those whites and Negroes who are inhabitants of this continent at the time of the passage of the act, the most anonymous consequences
Hold on,
would
time out.
ensue.
Don't breeze over that. Don't breeze over that. Okay, so what does this judge mean when he says that the applying to those whites and Negroes who were inhabitants of this continent at the time of the Passage Act? What happened to the other people that was here? If the whites and blacks are the inhabitants, what happened to the people that were here? Because this judge, brother, and I'm gonna go back to that. This case, if we go
Yeah,
look,
can we just finish reading? Instead of all
no,
that, we could do all this afterwards. Like you're like,
no.
let's just get to it, and then we can come back to it with all your little talking points. Then
You said context. So this
I
case,
know you're trying to create a narrative instead of just reading it.
no, the case
Yes,
was
we could do that afterwards. We could read it,
case
and then
was
you could bring up your
published
talking
in
points after that.
1854.
Again, we could bring up your talking
October
points after. Let's just finish reading it.
October 1854.
Yeah, ain't that some stuff? And y'all still believe that people came from Asia? And this judge even told you back then. Sheesh.
1854. No, they do come from. We have evidence
All
that
right,
they're
there we
here.
go.
Iberian
Where we at?
and Oceania.
Generic terms and refer to the two great types of mankind. Where'd I stop at? Whites and Negroes, inhabitants of the continent, the passage of this act.
Whites
The
and
European
Negroes.
white man who comes here will not be shielded from the testimony of the degraded and demoralized caste, while the Negro, fresh from the coast of Africa, or the Indian of Patagonia, the Kanaka, South Sea Islander, or New Hollander would be admitted upon their arrival to testify against white citizens in the courts of law. To argue such a proposition would be an insult to the good cause of the legislature.
Don't do that. Say it again. Where the
Say
Negro
what?
from? Where the Negro from?
While the Negro, fresh from the coast of Africa, or the Indian of Patagonia.
Stop. Don't just breeze by that, brother.
Okay, yes, it says the coast of Africa. Again, let's continue.
Don't breeze by that, brother.
Yo, stop with trying to make you can come back to that after we're done.
Don't
like damn.
Where the Negro from?
Let's just get through this first and then you can come back to it.
Where's the Negro from, bro?
Again, let's just finish reading and then you can come back to it.
Where the Negro from? Bro?
I know you're happy. Let's go. Let's finish reading and then we can come back to it.
I just want to know where the Negro from.
The evident intention of the act was to throw around the citizen the protection of the life and property, which would only be secured by removing him above the influences of the degraded caste. All right, scroll down a little bit. Scroll up a little bit.
No, I need you to start.
I can't read that part.
White man, bro.
What?
Because I ain't gonna say nothing. I want you to start over from the European white man because I interjected. So I want the point out. Start at the European white man.
Let's just scroll. No, we're done with that. Let's go. We'll come back to that.
No, we're not. The audience need to hear you say the
okay,
European
then go ahead and read it. Since I know you're clicking your heels, tapping your feet so happy because it says, oh my God, Africa. Come on, stop the games. Let's go.
No, I'm not, bro. I just need you to read the European white man for the listening audience.
Yeah, you're like walking a dog and trying to take a piss.
Hold on.
You're sniffing every damn tree instead of just getting it done.
The European white man who comes here would not be shielded from the testimony of the degraded and demoralized caste, while the Negro, fresh from the coast of Africa, or the Indian
of Patagonia,
the Kanaka, the South Sea Islanders, or the New Hollanders upon the arrival to testify against white citizens in our courts of law. To argue such a proportion would be an insult to the good sense of legislature. Here you go. Go ahead. The evident intention. Go on and read it. Read your source.
I already read that part.
We know. No. I'm talking about right here. It can hardly be supposed. Go ahead.
It can hardly be supposed that any legislature would attempt this by excluding domestic Negroes and Indians who not unfrequently have correct notions of their obligations to society, and turning loose upon the community would be more degraded tribes of the same species, who have nothing in common with us in language, country, or laws. We have thus far considered the subject on the hypothesis that the 14th section of the Act regulating criminal proceedings and the 394th section of the Practice Act were the same. As before remarked, there is a wide difference between the two.
Tell us why.
The word black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all black persons.
What the term Negro? What the term Negro? What were they referring to? What did the judge say when he spoke of Negro? He said,
does Negro include all black persons?
Africa. No.
The term black is what we're talking about, not Negro.
Bro.
We're talking about the term black, not Negro.
Black may include all Negroes.
But
the term Negro does not include all black persons. That ain't a you finna kill yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, it does not include all black persons. Okay.
Yeah, watch this.
So if all Negroes are black, then how is it that all blacks aren't Negro?
Can you finish reading, brother? Since you brought this to our attention to
okay. Oh, now you want me to read. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
By the use of this term, this connection, we understand it to mean the opposite of white. Oh. And that it should be taken as contradistinguished from all white persons. And using the words no black or mulatto person or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence against a white person, the legislature, if any intention can be ascribed to it, adopted the most comprehensive terms to embrace every known class or shade of color, and the apparent design was to protect white persons from the influence of all testimony other than that of persons of the same caste. The use of these terms must by every sound rule of construction exclude one who is not of white blood. The use of these terms by sound rule of construction exclude everyone who was not of white blood. The Act of Congress in defining what descriptions of aliens may become naturalized citizens provides that every free white citizen. In speaking on the subject, Chancellor Kent says that the Act confines the description of white citizen, and that is a matter of doubt whether under the provision any of the 20 races of Asia can be admitted to citizenship. We are not disposed to leave this question in any doubt. The word white has a distinct signification which ex vi termini excludes black, yellow, and all other colors. It will be observed by reference to the first section of the second article of the Constitution of the state that none but white males can become electors except in the case of Indians who may be admitted by special act of legislature. On examination of the constitutional debates, it will be found that not a little difficulty existed in selecting the precise words which were finally agreed upon as the most comprehensive that could be suggested to exclude all inferior races. If the term white was used in the Constitution, was not understood, where'd it go?
My bad. I slid it up so you can get the rest of it.
I'll scroll up just a little bit because I think you went past it.
No, I didn't. It's right there. You can't hold on. Let me do this. Let me make.
All right, there we go. Right there. All right.
Does that help you?
That was on me. My bad.
Okay.
All right. If the term white as used in the Constitution was not understood in a generic sense as including the Caucasian race and necessarily excluding all others, where was the necessity of providing for the admission of Indians to the privilege of voting by special legislation? We are of the opinion that the words white, Negro, mulatto, Indian, and black person, wherever they occur in our constitutional laws, must be taken in their generic sense, and that even admitting that the Indian of this continent is not of the Mongolian type, that the words black person in the 14th section must be taken as contradistinguished from white, and necessarily excludes all races other than Caucasian. We have carefully considered all the consequences resulting from the different rule of construction and are satisfied that even in a doubtful case, we would be impelled to this decision on the grounds of public policy. The same rule which would admit to them to testify would admit them to all equal rights of citizenship, and we might soon see them at the polls in the jury box upon the bench of our legislative halls. This is not speculation which exists in the excited, overheated imagination of patriot and statesman, but is the actual and present danger. Now you see, they shook, right? The anomalous spectacle of distinct people living in our community, recognizing no laws of the state except through necessity, bringing with them their prejudice and national feuds in which they indulge in open violations of law, whose mediocrity is proverbial, and a race of people whom nature has marked as inferior and who are incapable of progress or intellectual development beyond certain point, as their history has shown, differing in language, opinions, color, physical conformation, between whom ourselves nature has placed an impassable difference is now presented, and for them it is claimed not only the right to swear away the life of a citizen, but the further privilege of participating with us in administering in the affairs of our government. The facts were before the legislature that framed this act and have been known in the public as matters of public history to every subsequent legislature. There can be no doubt the intention of the legislature that if it had ever been anticipated the class of people were not embraced in the prohibition, then specific words would have been employed as what put them in a matter of possible. For these reasons, we are of the opinion the testimony was inadmissible. The judgment is reversed, cause remanded, dissent. Yeah. So what you learn there is that all black persons ain't Negroes, and that Indians didn't come from Asia.
That's not what we learned, bro. That is not a source to distinguish the definition term for black. What we learned about people versus
they give you historical use of the word black. That's what he summed up.
Iowa, brother, please just listen for a second. Here's what we learned. In a October 1st, 1854 Supreme Court case for the People versus Hall, we learned that they tried to exclude all other peoples from testifying against a white man who had killed Chinese people. And in so doing, the judge provides his opinion. Judge Murray provides his opinion over what he perceived certain titles to be and mean. When he says black, he meant Negroes. He said Negroes was from Africa, but not all blacks are Negroes. He didn't clear anything up. He is providing his opinion. So again, what I am trying to understand, then why would you bring a judge from 1854 to tell you his opinion on a case against a white man? That does not refute anything that I presented today and or have said.
No, you said that black only means
I didn't say black only means.
Yes,
I
you
brought
did.
up a definition and showed you what black mean. Okay, so
because that was you trying to prove that black men are African.
Let's go to we know what in America, we know what the definition.
And you just read the judge who gave his opinion based on previous legislation and court cases that he's read and the usage of these terms and how they were used. So he made a distinguishment.
Kiowa.
So like I said,
is the judge, listen to me,
I said, blacks just mean non-white.
Is the judge providing a definition of black?
Yes.
Where's the definition at?
Right there. Where he said blacks are Negroes and Negroes aren't all blacks. He broke it down for you.
Where is the definition at?
Oh, so you're supposed to say this is a definition of the term black, or he sat there and broke it down to you that all these other people were black.
Black. Where did he define black, brother?
Black is contradistinguished from white. That's where he defined it.
Okay. So anything that's non-white was black. Is that what you're saying that he said?
Yeah.
And are you sure? And are you sure of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take you back to what he says. He says in the 14th section of the Act, again, this is his opinion, April 16th, 1850, regulating criminal proceedings, provides that no black or mulatto person or Indian. So he basically, listen to what he distinctively does in his opening statement. He says, no black. So we know who the black people are, or mulatto. So he mixed race, or Indian. Shall be allowed to give evidence in favor or against a white man. He goes on to say, the true point of which we are anxious to arrive is the legal signification. Now, let's be specific. He says the legal specification of the words black, mulatto, Indian, and white person, and whether the legislature adopted them as generic terms or intended to limit their application to specific types of human species. Before considering this question, he says, it is proper to remark the differences between the two sections of our statute already quoted, the latter more broad and comprehensive in exclusion by use of the word black instead of Negro. Conceding, however, for the present, that the word black, as used in the 14th section, and Negro in the 394th are convertible terms. So he's telling you that these terms are interchangeable, black and Negro. He does not define the word black.
Continue reading.
I don't need to continue to read.
Because you got to the point where you want it.
I have to go.
Got you.
No, I have to go down to where he uses the terms so that we can be specific. I don't have to reread what you already read. Everybody has gathered the context.
You just did it.
We don't even know why you're trying to use this to qualify anything that was said today on the show. You're dismissing.
You asked for a source about the term black, and I gave you one.
I said, don't come on my platform without a source unless you have without a source. That's what I said. Now, everything that I presented was about the Paleo Indians being the first people to populate the Americas. There wasn't nobody already here. You don't have evidence to go against the grain. You tried to say, well, it wasn't no Asians. Who said that it wasn't no Asians? This judge doesn't know the significance of data that actually exists at the time, because the things that we have today.
Obviously, he did, because he spoke on it.
Obviously, he didn't in 1854, my brother.
Obviously, he did. You're just trying to use genetic studies to say he's outdated, even though the genetic studies say basically the same thing that was being said back then.
Outdated. I ain't saying none of that. I am telling
That's what you're trying to imply.
No, I'm not implying anything. I am.
You just said he wasn't privy to the times and dates and all this other shit. So that means you're implying that because he doesn't have the 2023 shit, he's wrong.
Kiowa, he is implying in this article, he is not the authority here over terms. He is not. He is. And it tells you at the.
He referred back to the legislature and actually the scientists and all that back then.
And he referred back to what the hell this dude is doing.
He referred back to everything else. And he put it in context of the situation at hand. Can this Chinese man testify? No, because the China man is black.
What did he say? The Chinese man was no goddamn black. He's delivered
yes, he was.
The opinion. Listen to this. He prove it that the Chinese man was black. Where's that at? Prove it.
Again, he broke the whole thing down for you. Black means everybody not white.
Bro, he told
they didn't have anything for Chinese.
Come on.
So therefore, anybody not white or Negro or whatever is black. It's really that simple.
Right. So the Native American and the Native American and the Chinese man can claim black, so they can have some type of jurisdiction to do what they needed to do. So now everybody was black. You see what I'm saying?
Hey, as a matter of fact, you just read that the other day when you was trying to play that game with the Spaldings and all that.
No, there was no game being played.
Remember when you was reading that about the Haliwa Saponi? Yeah, you read that. They had the choice be Indian and black. They chose to be black because they could get benefits that they couldn't as Indians. Remember that?
Kiowa, do you understand
So
that
that's
you
two sources you got now.
Kiowa, no, I already knew this information that people would identify with what the white people had already set up.
No, you just sat there and said, "Oh well, Chinese are black now." So there you go.
God. All right. So what I'm trying to say, without rudely being interrupted by Kiowa, is that he ain't bringing no information that we already knew about. This don't even define nothing. I asked you for a definition of black. You give me a court case that has nothing to do with the definition. The judge is providing and presiding over a case and providing his opinion. It is specific. It is telling us the judge is giving his opinion on the case. In giving his opinion on the case, he identified that there was no other qualifications that would insert that Indians and Chinese and the Negroes could testify against a white man. This is what he is bringing to the people. I am of the opinion. Why come the blacks? Why come the the Indians? Why come the Chinese testify against this dude? Oh, because you said our law states that no one of black descent can testify against whites. It says it up and down the damn article. So there still is no definition provided or presided over by the judge. He is giving his goddamn opinion. Then you take into effect that he's saying that these motherfuckers is Mongol. Do you know what a Mongoloid is? So let's break it all the way down, since we're dealing with the judge Kiowa. Kiowa. Let's go see what he says when he brings up the Mongoloid shit. Because this is the problem with comprehension in this community, bro. People don't fucking understand what they read. They just assume something, and this don't even prove that your ass is an Indian. So he says, from the eastern portions of the Kamchatka and the Aleutian Islands form a long and continuous group extending eastward to the portion of the North American continent inhabited by the Esquimaux. They appear to be a continuation of a lofty volcanic ranges which traverse the two continents and are inhabited by a race who resembles in a remarkable degree in language and appearance both the inhabitants of the Kamchatka, who are I'm saying that wrong, Kamchatka, and who are admitted to being the Mongolian type. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go see what a Mongoloid look like. Mongolian people. Let's go see what Mongolian look like. Ladies and gentlemen, phenotypically speaking, he is referring to Mongolians. So let's deal with the wiki article and see what Mongols are. Mongols, East Asian, but he says in the same article that the brother said that the people were not Asian. Yet in the same article, you just heard me, hold on, you just heard me say, boom, put it right back. You just heard him say, the language and appearance, both the inhabitants who are admitted to be of the Mongolian type, and Extriomax, who again are termed to resemble other tribes of American Indian. So in all of this, he is saying that the Mongols, these people that he's referring to, are Mongoloids. These Mongoloids that he's referring to are East Asians. Who did I say populated the Americas? I said East Asian, I said Southeast Asians, East Eurasians, and I also said the Oceania people. I gave you three distinct groups of the peoples of the Americas, the first peoples of the Americas, the ones who got annihilated by diseases when they encountered the Europeans. But to sit here and insinuate such a thing is very disingenuous, Kiowa, because your source that you brought to the table is giving his opinion about all these other things. He goes on to say, the similarity of the skull and pelvis and the general configurations of the two races, the remarkable resemblances in eyes, beards, hair, and other peculiarities, together with the continuity of the two continents, might well have led to the belief that this country was first peopled by the Asiatics. Now remember, don't get confused by the Asiatics, because let me show you who are the Asiatics. Everybody, do you know who the Asiatics are? You know what I'm saying? Do you know who the Asiatics are, huh? Who is the Asiatics? Is it just the Asians? Or was the Asiatics in ancient Kemet? Could that be the Middle Easterners? You see how broad that is? You see how non-specific that is? And that the difference between the different tribes and the parent stock was such would necessarily arise from the continuous climate pursuits and the physical causes, and was no greater than the existence between an Arab and a European, both of whom were supposed to belong to the Caucasian race. That's per the Caucasians. So these Mongoloid types were pretty much the same people. That's what he says. And then he goes on and he goes on and dropped this line on us right here. Although the discoveries of eminent archaeologists and the researchers of modern geologists have given to this continent an antiquity of thousands of years of interior to the evidence of man's existence, and the light of modern science may show conclusively that it was not peopled by the inhabitants of Asia, because he's referring to the Asiatics, but the Aborigines, who are a distinct type. And as such claim as a distinct origin. Still, this would not in any degree alter the meaning of the term and render that the specific which was before generic. You see how he said this doesn't even alter the meaning of the term? Because he never defines nothing in this mug to the degree of what Kiowa insinuates. However, he distinguishing the great Mongolian race. Can then he's referring back to Indian. So what did you bring this up for? Because this don't help you. This don't help you at all, Kiowa. Where the hell you go? Where you go, Kiowa? Brother, listen. Columbus didn't misrepresent the first people. He did. He misrepresented the people by calling them Indians. Yes, he absolutely did. Columbus did misrepresent them. My bad, everything is everything. He did. But Kiowa is not listening. He is crazy. And the science says that the peoples of the Americas carry distinct genes that are significant with archaic humans, more specifically the Novicens. That's how they know that they are part of the people, that they descend from the people from Southeast Asia, Eurasia, and Oceania, because that group, those three that I just named, also carry those same traits. So why did you see what I'm saying? This is how pseudo people are. Just wanted to see you run again. He left the chat. What did he leave the chat for? Why did he leave the panel to go in the chat and say that someone's running? Brother, all I did was just mute you so that I could get the point out that I was trying to make without you crying about something. Because you said that this judge who gave his opinion back in 1854 defined some shit. He said he'd given his opinion. And that still doesn't substantiate he ain't even arguing against anything that I presented, bro. I presented evidence of the peoples of the Americas. So what are you trying to refute? When did you get to the Americas? I didn't kick you off, bro. I didn't kick you off. I muted you. That was it. I muted you to get my point out without you crying. That was it. Don't complain because everybody panel you done been on do your ass like that. So don't complain when I do it. I want the same respect you give everybody else when you do go over there. If they don't kick you out and put you on the back, you shut the fuck up and listen. I heard you listen on Garfield's show for 30 minutes without saying nothing. Then I also heard you butting in. The point is simple, bro. You don't have evidence to tell me that the people who peopled the Americas was you. You don't have evidence to tell me or show me or prove to me that you are an Indian, because Indians are of the Oceania, Eurasian, and Southeast Asian type. You're not that type. You don't possess the genetics of an ancient Denovisan or a Denovisan person. You don't have archaic genes, bro. You don't possess them archaic genes. So whatever I presented today, you didn't even come on here to refute. You came on here to try to talk about a word. The term black here in America denotes sub-Saharan Africans. So don't play that game with me, brother. And then you try to go back and use an 1800 argument where they classified only 2 sets of races in this motherfucker when they established it. And in establishing these 2 distinct races, they didn't have nowhere to classify the Indians who said this to the white man and the Chinese who said this to the white man as well. So they had to identify as something, and they couldn't identify as white because the white people wouldn't let them identify as white. And it say that in this opinion. You need me to read it to you? Let me put it back on the screen. Let me put it back on the screen. You wasn't born here, motherfucker. You was born here. Your ancestors wasn't born here. So stop lying. Cap ass nigga running around here talking about I was born here. We all were born here, but we are descendants of people who were kidnapped, enslaved, and brought here against their will. And after hundreds of years of that torture, we began to be born here. And people began to be born here and born here and born here and on and on and on and where we are to the break of dawn. So your man say in your own source, bro, in your own source, bro, that these people couldn't identify as white. When he gets to explaining white, bro, they can't, the Chinese couldn't identify as white, the Indian couldn't identify as white, and you damn sure know black people couldn't identify as white. Am I lying? Who in the chat think that these Asians, Indians, and so forth could identify as white? Who? The act of Congress in defining what descriptions of aliens may become naturalized citizens provides that every free white citizen, et cetera, et cetera. And speaking of this subject, Chancellor Kent says that the act confines the description to white citizens and that it is a matter of doubt whether under this provision, any of the tawny races of Asia can be admitted to citizenship. So the Asians couldn't get citizenship. Using words, no black or mulatto or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence for or against a white person. The legislator, if any intention can be ascribed to it, adopted the most comprehensive terms to embrace every known class of shade of color. The apparent design was, what was the apparent design was for? To protect the white person from the influence of all testimony other than the persons of the same caste. That's what this shit was about, to protect the white blood. He says it. The use of the terms must be every sound rule of construction. Exclude everyone who is not of white blood. exclude black, exclude yellow, and all other colors. He said it right here. He said it right there. We are not disposed to leave this question in any doubt. The word white has a distinct signification, which ex via termini excludes black, yellow, and all other colors. It will be observed by any reference to the first section of the second article of the Constitution that states that no one but white males can become electors, except in the case of Indians who may be admitted by special act of legislature. On examination of the constitutional debates, it will be found that not a little difficulty exists in selecting these precise words, which were finally agreed upon as the most comprehensive that could be suggested to exclude all inferior races. If the term white is used in the Constitution was not understood in its generic sense as including the Caucasian race and necessarily excluding all other, were the necessity of providing the admission of Indians to the privilege of voting by special legislation. Then he goes on and he says everything else. He doesn't do what you said that he did because you're a disingenuous liar with no source. You're not an Indian. You're not a native. You're not Aboriginal. You're not indigenous. You are a black man in America who descend from Africans off the western coast of West Africa, probably Nigeria, right? Down there at the Bight of Biafra. You were your ancestors were directly a part of the Ma'afa. And you want to sit here and insinuate and push and delegate a court case against a white man as definitions? Negro, you ain't got that much of an education to come up with a better argument than what you just did after sitting here trying to say, no, read the whole article. Read it in its context. Smack yourself. Bruh, it's just stupid. Stupid, man. And he think people are dumb, bro. He think people slow, bro. United States versus Begot Singh Thing was in the case of the Supreme Court of the United States decided that Begot Singh Thing, an Indian Sikh man who identified himself as Aryan, was ineligible for naturalized citizenship in the United States. In 1919, Thing filed a petition for naturalization under the Naturalization Act of 1906, which allowed only free white persons and aliens of African nativity and persons of African descent to become United States citizens by naturalization. After this petition, the government attorneys initiated a proceeding, canceled Thing's naturalization, and a trial followed in which the government presented evidence of Thing's political activities as found a member of the Ghadar Party, an Indian independence movement headquartered in San Francisco. Thing did not challenge the constitutionality of the racial restrictions. Instead, he attempted to be classified as a free white person within the meaning of the Naturalization Act based on the fact that Indians and Europeans share common descent of Proto-Indo-Europeans. Then was represented by a fellow Indian American, Sakaram Ganesh Pandit, a California attorney. The court unanimously rejected Thin's argument, adding that Thin did not meet a common sense definition of white. Ruling that Thin could not become naturalized citizen, the court concluded that the term Aryan has to do with linguistics and not at all the physical characteristics, and it would seem reasonably clear that the mere resemblance in language indicating a common linguistic root buried in remotely ancient soil is altogether inadequate to prove common racial origin. Go to a bus stop in Mississippi in 1940 and see if you can get a seat in the front. I ain't gotta go no more, bro. You know what I'm saying? Khalil just cute you in the chat, bro. Khalil just killed you in the chat, bro. He came from the chat with his spears. He threw one at you from the chat. He was like, bro, take this, bro. Come on, man, an Indian dude, bro. They knew exactly what they were doing, man. This land was for them, by them. Tupac told you it's a white man's world. The United States is a great indication of that. Your black ass is of Negro. Your black ass is of African descent. That white man who court case you gave us, who gave his opinion, told you that your black ass was an African. And then he said, Kiowa, behind that when they denote people as black, meaning the Indians and the Chinese, is because they don't have a classification for the Indians and the Chinese. So do yourself and us a favor and get out of your shell, bro. Because you ran like a little biatch because you couldn't deal with the science. You couldn't deal with what was actually presented over the last 2 hours, brother. 2.5 hours. You just wasting my time. Once again. Tell your son I said, what up? What up, my G? What's good with you, young gunner? Tell your mama she's pseudo, homie. She ain't pseudo on this topic because we didn't beat her up out of that. She won't even go pseudo on this topic. Nah, she ain't nowhere near no pseudo on this topic. Too much evidence. This dude keeps saying people running, bro, but all I did was put him in the back and he dipped. Come on, bro. We all know, we all witnessed it again, how suckerish you are, and that this evidence makes you look really bad, bro. This evidence presented makes you look really bad, bro. Go get your best scholar, bro. Do us a favor, go get your teacher. I'm gonna wait about another 10 minutes. If your teacher can't show up, oh my bad. All right, I got you. If your teacher can't show up, bro, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna end on that note. Go get your teacher. Kiowa, go get your teacher. While I'm reading the verdict, go get your teacher. You got time because look how long the verdict is. I got some reading to do. Let me drink a sip of my water. Associate Justice George Sutherland. Peep game, y'all. George Sutherland said that the authorities of the subject of race were in disagreement over which people were included in the scientific definition of Caucasian race. So Sutherland instead chose to rely on a common understanding of race rather than the scientific understanding of race. Sutherland found that while Thine may claim to have purity of Aryan blood due to being born in the village of Tangara Talawa near the Janduli Guru and the Amritsar, Punjab, he was not a Caucasian in common understanding, so he could not be included in the statutory category as a white person. The court reiterated its holding in Ozawa versus the United States, explaining the words free white persons is naturalizing act where synonymous with the word Caucasian only as the word is popularly understood, pointing out that the statutory language was to interpreted as words of common speech and not of scientific origin, written in the common speech for the common understanding by unscientific men. Justice Sutherland wrote in his summary, the eligibility of the applicant for citizenship is based on the sole fact that he is of high caste Hindu stock, born in the village of Tangara Talawa, Amritsar district, Punjab, one of extreme northern western districts of India, and classified by the scientific authorities of the Caucasian or Aryan race in the Punjab and the Rajputana, while the invaders seem to have met with more success The effort of these preserves their racial purity. Intermarriages did occur, producing an intermingling of the two and destroying the greater or lesser of the purity of the Aryan blood. The rules of caste were calculated to prevent the intermixture, seem not to have been entirely successful. The given group cannot be properly assigned to any of the enumerated grand racial divisions. The type may have been so changed by the admixture of blood or justify the intermediate classification, but something very likely this has happened, actually taken place in India. Thus, the Hindustan and the Barar, there was such of an intermixture of Aryan invader with dark-skinned Dravidian. The 1910 Encyclopedia Britannica entry of Hinduism that Justice Sutherland cites as a sole source for his history contradicts his conclusion about the Aryans of the thin birthplace in the Punjab are explicitly refers to the Aryans of India as a part of the white race. The court nonetheless had also concluded that the term Aryan has to do with linguistics and not at all physical characteristics, and would seem reasonably clear that the mere resemblance in language indicating common linguistic root buried in remotely ancient soil is altogether inadequate to prove a common racial origin. The court argued that the exclusion of non-whites was based on the idea of racial differences rather than the idea of one race is superior or inferior to another. The court argued that the racial difference between Indians and whites was so great that the great body of our people would reject assimilation with Indians. They said they reject an assimilation with Indians and Negroes, nigga. In conclusion, Kiowa, the court notes that the Congress, by the Act of February 5th, 1917, 39, Stat 874, C29/3, has now excluded from admission into the country all natives of Asia within designated limits of latitude and longitude, including the whole of India, suggesting its intention that natives of India also be excluded from the eligibility of naturalized citizenship. Your black ass come on here with a motherfucking Hall versus the people versus Hall. You sideways sucker. They ain't had nothing to do with nothing that I presented today. Nothing. You had absolutely nothing to refute what I actually dropped on you today. But what you did do was give us a judge who had the opinion of exactly how white people felt and told us that motherfucking Negroes was Africans. You brought a white judge from 1854 to tell us that Negroes was Africans. We already knew that. And one even better, he denotes Negroes with blacks like all white people. So when white people refer to Negroes, they talking about black people. They denote they go together. Then he says, but not all blacks are Negroes because they don't have a classification for Indians and Asians. In this instance, Chinese. So they made the Chinese classify as black as well as the Indian classify as black because the white race don't want no part with these motherfuckers. So here you is gonna make your source say some shit that it ain't even saying. All the while, your source ain't even dealing with the information that I brought forth. Talking about the peoples, the first peoples of the Americas. That's the topic. That's what I was building on for 3 hours, 2 hours. And then you come up with this bullshit source. And then you want to talk about people running. No, I muted you because you didn't want to listen. All you had to do was shut the fuck up and listen, bro. While you was reading, I shut the fuck up and listen. When I interrupted you, when you was trying to make you try to breeze by that shit, that was the only time that I really was over talking you. But I wanted you to start over again because I was gonna shut the fuck up and be quiet and let you continue to read. But see, you so disingenuous. You a little lying ass, $5 ass wannabe Indian. That you come on my platform full of information and sources, and you try to play us, nigga. Who the fuck you think you is? Now, I want to apologize to the young son that's listening to this show and those of you who will catch it in the replay. It really pisses me off when I talk to these dudes who claim to be this, that, and the third. And then you sit here and you provide solid information, research, sources that they can critique or they can vet. And they don't deal with your information. They just go in a whole nother direction and insinuate other things. It happened in the chat with the Dame guy. And then it happened again with Kiowa, or however he want to say his name. That ain't even his name. He won't even claim who he is. His mama probably named him Emmanuel or Josephus or some Christian Bible name or something like that. But it was very disingenuous of you to try to turn the tide of the conversation. I'm talking about people in the Americas, and you ain't got no evidence. So, guess what, y'all? The title of the show is called People in the Americas, the evidence we have versus the evidence that doesn't exist. Kiowa is a great example of the evidence that doesn't exist. Dame is a great example. Dame West is a great example of the evidence that doesn't exist. Dane Calloway is an example of the evidence that doesn't exist. Chief Holiday, Top Cat are examples of Aboriginal power, examples of evidence that doesn't exist. When you talk to them, you never get their source. But they want to talk Pan-Africanism, and they want to distract our asses from everything else that they got going on. So I hope that PBS doesn't strike this video. I hope, for their purposes. I hope that no one else does anything else to the video, because if it's up, it's a good learning tool. So I highly suggest anyone interested in any other information in the description of this video that you go get the source information once this video concludes, because you need that information. You need that information. We beating up Abos. But other than that, man, we have a serious problem in our community, because these dudes, they don't, you heard a dude on Garfield's show earlier called Smoke Signal. He said he hate everything African. He don't like no African, nothing. That's what he said. He said that on the show. So how are we supposed to come together and forward the agenda of African Americans in the Americas when you got a section of African Americans that don't even want to identify as African, and don't even respect the struggles and the things that actually transpire and that we went through? So ain't no way we gonna motherfucking get any damn well with these useless Negroes.
I think oftentimes when people hear me and see me, they think that I'm a fool. They think that somehow or another I've lost my mind, that I'm not down with the in crowd. They've said that nobody would love me and that I'm an outcast. But let me say this here now. We can be clear about anything. Please let me be clear about this. And I pray that it's received and understood. I don't want to be one of you. I don't want to be one of you weak men, weak people.
For my brother,
I'd rather die, death is welcome, rather than to call myself you spineless black men.
Sci-high, I ain't your traditional. Rapper smoking medicinal, stayed in detention. Life is all about principle, cynical ass niggas. Sorry that I offended you. I bring something different while niggas sounding identical. I'd rather drown in a swimming pool than to let you imbeciles stop me from topping my pinnacle. Try me dropped by the genitals. Trust me, it's not intentional. It's the difference between a gangster and a criminal. Cause real gangsters can't do do Breakfast Club interviews. A lot of you niggas don't own a business suit. A slave for every pair of Michael Jordan tennis shoe. But anywho, got your bitch walking around like she Winnie Pooh with no bottoms on, just the top of her swimming suit. What you gon' say when the niggas gon' try to get at you? Them in what army, or you just talking in general? Cause in the end, we all gon' die like them Seminoles, nigga. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up. These niggas weak. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up. These niggas weak.
When I look at the sorry state of black men in America today, the destruction of the family, the loss of integrity. When as a young boy, black shot down every day for years without stopping, when I look at what we are as black people, I'd rather be dead than to continue to live against such.
Y'all ain't trying to start a revolution. Y'all looking for a restitution. Niggas kill each other every day and ain't no evolution. My partner shot 100 niggas and it was never proven. We just labeled him a gangster and kept it moving. Let me give you the same outcome, separate shooting. A white man kill a black, we holler persecution. So instead of looting, it's time to find some better schooling. You can act like y'all don't understand when I'm elocuting. Did I stutter? I was never Reuben. Y'all ain't no Black Panthers. You wasn't there with Newton. You ain't Martin Martin. Try to better humans. Instead of all these rappers, we need some better students. It's time to rebuild the neighborhoods that we helped to ruin. And the NAACP, y'all need some help recruiting. Fuck a resolution. Let's get some retribution. I feel like Malcolm X when he left the movement. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up. These niggas weak. These niggas weak. I'm fucking up. These niggas weak. Yeah. Y'all know what it is, yeah, I said it, nigga. All you niggas laying up with these bitches with no condoms and shit. Having mistake babies and shit, leaving these women to motherfucking raise your kids by their motherfucking self. Yeah, my nigga, I said it. You don't like what's going on in the motherfucking America, leave this motherfucker. When they said we were free, my nigga, that mean we were free to go back where the fuck we came from, my nigga. Yeah, it's a whole motherfucking continent that belong to us, nigga. It's called Africa, motherfucker. What the fuck is y'all talking about? Y'all ain't trying to start no revolution. Y'all motherfuckers spent 10 bands on the motherfucking section in the motherfucking club. 10 bands to build a whole motherfucking neighborhood in Nigeria, nigga. Get the fuck out of here.